It feels like I've lived 1,000 parallel lives to my own through this journey. Um, you know, through other people, uh, billionaires, bartenders, rural stay-at-home moms, urban baddie influencers, crypto degens, skeptics, healers, health, wealth, relationship coaches. This common denominator that I have never been able to stop running into is very kumbaya. Um, but I think it's really important to share because we're entering this time that I've been yapping about online and been kind of sensing for a while now, even since before I trusted my senses, which has been an ongoing journey, that the online and offline worlds are integrating. Because I've been watching the online world take shape since as early as high school. I'm 30 now. Even before internet money was a big thing, you know? When I was a teenager, I had this idea of being a blogger and working location independent, kind of being boarding it up. And I always wanted to be a writer since I was a kid. Bopping around my mom's restaurants. Used to shadow. And writing my thoughts and musings and observations of people. But the digital economy wasn't really a thing, and now it is. And it's funny because still to this day, all the people I talk to offline, it's still such a foreign underground concept to them. Like, I don't think people offline, brick and mortar business owners, boomers who, criticize anything online and don't really trust it yet because of this reputation that my generation has earned itself for being glued to our phones and obsessed with being performative and clout hungry on social media. Like, these two worlds don't really understand each other. On one side, you've got that. And then on the other side, you've got this big booming world online with taking over an industry. And I think they're both being challenged to integrate. One of the jokes that I've made a lot is I call this online space the new Hollywood. You learn a lot of things working behind the scenes of there's scandals, there's gossip, there's fame, there's a shit ton of money, there's creative talent, there's people that go off the deep end. There's little writers like me that for years and years and years have been kind of writing and using these characters in this famous space as their muses. Now, I go by fractional muse. Sounds really silly, but it's funny because it's kind of a reciprocal dynamic, So many psyches. It teaches you a lot about the game, public image versus who you really are inside, how aligned those two identities are, or how much of a gap there is between them. On one end of that spectrum, you have, I always refer to the movie Avatar. On one extreme, you can think of social media influencers and performers similar to the movie Avatar, where they've kind of outsourced this idealized, perfect version of themselves in their online identity, personal brand, to just capture the best side of themselves, right? On some level, that's important. Being appealing and getting attention and marketable, especially in the attention economy, there's an aspect of that that's important. Nobody can give you time or money before they give you attention. But where that tends to trigger some trust issues is the performance element of it, right? How much is somebody performing? How authentic are they? How do you know what to trust when everything is just showing you its best side? Hollywood, right? Same to how people watch Hollywood actors and singers and gossip about what's really going on behind the scenes when they get little tidbits of gossip. Like, that's the same thing with this. But then on the other end of the spectrum, you also have that phenomenon that people from before the online world was so relevant that remind me of the concept of like a starving artist, right? you tend to avoid money more. You tend to avoid attention more, as opposed to these more celebrity types that just seem to be there for money and attention, or business types that just seem to be money driven. You tend to really care about what you're doing. You have a lot of talent, but you're more undiscovered because you kind of demonize the idea of money and attention in your mind. But then you can also sacrifice, your livelihood and your quality of life, and even helping the people and touching the lives that you're meant to, because you leave so much attention and money on the table that people can't find your work. People can't find you as an option to trust as a coach. I've spoken to hundreds of prospects who are wrestling kind of that thing. Maybe they're on the money, attention hungry side of it. And now their problem is they've scaled a brand or a business that is totally out of alignment with their authentic offline self. And they're going through an identity crisis. They don't know how to step into this new chapter. And that online avatar version of themselves has just become so far distanced from their true offline self. They've just lost themselves in all of the noise, right? They've gotten terminally online. They've fallen into this pattern of outsourcing all the validation that they collect through how much money they make, or how beautiful they look, or how many followers or likes that they have. And those paradigms and algorithms are changing. Now people are hungry for real. They're tired of the picture perfect chick on Instagram with 1 billion followers who has 0 flaws, and you get into her and she has no soul, she has no substance, she clearly doesn't give a shit about what she's doing or the people she's taking care of. And now that's contributed to this low trust economy that we're now in online. And it's also just further reinforced the offline extremes perception of the online world. On the other end of that, you have the more starving artist type that realizes, listen, my local mom and pop restaurant or business in this small town like Tampa, Florida, or with this small operational product, we're just getting outshined by bigger competitors that have a lot more attention, a lot more marketing, and a lot more money behind them. And we really care about what we're doing, but I don't want to chase the money. I don't want to chase the attention. I don't want to get it, learn marketing and sales. That shit's evil. I just want to build it and they will come. What the starving artist leaning end of that is coming to learn is the opposite, a corollary lesson to the more money and attention lenient ones, which is what you're here to do, your craft, your care, your business that supports your family. It's not going to survive if you don't learn to use the same tools to get more money and get more attention. You can either demonize those things and leave a bunch of money and attention on the table, and eventually, as a lot of people are finding out, suffer for it, right? Empty business, no sales. You really care about what you're doing, but you're not willing to play the game. But are you really helping people? Are you really helping yourself? I've posted about, I'm always talking about these two extremes because the common denominator in all these different ways that I've helped people, there's been so many different entry points, right? Maybe they come to me about a business problem, or trying to move from the offline world to the online world, or they're in the online world and they need to integrate their offline selves, or they enter because they're so bullish on business that they've sacrificed their health and personal relationships, or they're so bullish on personal relationships and health that they've sacrificed opportunity and money. The common denominator is integration. The online and offline world integrating, the money and attention leaning types integrating with the craft and care and qualitative end of things, and vice versa. Because here's the thing. Let's use health and wellness coaches, for example. I've spoken to dozens of nurses who they know it's possible to build an online business using their experience and knowledge in health and wellness or fitness, and that people like them are doing it. And they're starting to entertain the idea of pursuing more money and attention for better quality of life, because they're working for people, they're burnt out, they're underpaid, and they just keep seeing on social media it's possible. Now they're kind of scared of getting attention and money, and whether or not they can do it. They struggle with imposter syndrome, self-belief. But Things are getting so bad that they're being forced to consider it. Something I'm always telling those types, and it's the same thing I'd say to, offline mom and pop businesses that avoid the big marketable attention grabbing tools that they can use to bring more business in because of their pride in avoiding attention. It's your ideal customers, the people who would love your cuisine, the people whose health is in the shitter and they could really benefit from what you know and can teach them about their nutrition, about their fitness, about their quality of life, about how to balance work and play or health and work. They are going to pay people time and or money and or attention, whether you seize their attention or not. Now, if you believe that the people who pursue their attention are all evil, then you're indirectly doing them a disservice, right? Because they're either going to just keep suffering for this problem or they're going to find a solution. And those solutions are your competitors. Even if you're not a very competitive type, like I'm not very competitive, which sounds good and like kumbaya, but I've paid a lot of opportunity costs for it because it just doesn't move me. Whether or not you are a competitive person, feel comfortable with attention and money, you have competition, right? The other businesses in your niche or in your world, health, wealth, relationships, restaurants, products. The people who would love to be your customers are going to end up in their hands. So by you not getting in front of them, you're putting them in the hands of people who don't care as much about them, who don't care as much about quality, because maybe they're too lenient on the money and quantity. It's not noble to avoid making it easier for the people who would genuinely benefit from your product or service to find you, right? They're either going to find you and be so grateful to invest their hard-earned money in something that would really contribute to their quality of life, or they're going to end up in these evil hands, which, by the way, not all of these money attention-seeking people are evil. I've had to learn that lesson too, and I'll get into more of that in another video. But that's a really important lesson to consider, And even if you listen to this part and you choose to avoid it, this is already happening to a bunch of businesses and starving artist types, right? Money is not evil. Attention is not evil. What's evil is the humans who use powerful tools, right? And how they use those tools. Anything with power can be used in a good or a bad way. What has power? Money, right? Attention, social media, people on opposing sides. This is another common denominator. People on opposing sides, y'all have way more in common than you think, right? It's like everything's very yin and yang. Men and women now hate each other. Liberals and Democrats now hate each other. The money and attention hungry people now hate and disrespect the kumbaya, world peace, care, and qualitative people, and vice versa. But y'all have the exact same problems as opposites. You'll see this theme through every single chapter that I touch on in this video. You already have. So let me anchor where my path actually began. Ever since I was a kid, I wanted to be a writer. I just loved talking to people. I loved hearing human stories. I loved writing about them. There's always been those two ends of the spectrums, but within my nature. This is the pattern that's been following me my entire life. Me, my own little thing. Introvert, creative, writing, Trina self, processing, isolating, alchemizing experiences, first and secondhand stories into lessons and insights and sharing those experiences. And then the other side of me that's more extrovert, social, working for something bigger than me. These different companies I'm about to touch on, these big public figures. This has been a pattern throughout my entire life. And what I love about this is they've always kind of fed each other in an irreducible way where it's been hard to sacrifice one for the other, you know? Um, each of these opposing worlds that I work in, right? The big entities that I worked for, you know, there's been many times where it makes so much sense. They look at me and my selfish sovereignty in my writing, like, that's crazy. Why are you even doing that? Or why haven't you grown your audience or really taken it seriously in this business way? But that's because since the beginning of time, even before I had a real career life, right? But before I went through my 20s, I wanted to have that full freedom to create and live and navigate and bop around and explore however it feels right in my soul to. And that's the number one priority in me because it's just who I am. On another level, I love people and bigger entities, right? And the lessons and training and drive and influences and inspiration that working for something bigger than me and beyond and outside of myself and breathing life into that in my way, in whatever way I can, that feeds the work, the writing, the insights, the epiphanies, my own personal, private, individual self-development. So with this idea in mind, I started out with a really abstract idea that, you know, that's what I want to do. So in college, I started out looking for a psychology degree. You know, I went through some shit in my childhood. I'll touch on that in another story. I want to keep this just to this 7-year period. But I went through some primordial experiences as a kid and growing up that just since the beginning of time got me into the power of talking and alchemizing, whether it was on the page writing or clarifying it in a private one-on-one conversation. My childhood best friend, my longest friendship, her mom was a therapist, right? And we're going to get into all the critiques of therapy. So it gave me this idea that I you know, maybe I could be a therapist. So I started college. I chose my degree to be psychology. I hated statistics. I've always hated math. Asian stereotype, I know. I failed statistics, and I also didn't really like anybody in the psychology department. You know, I got along way more with like the creative weirdo writers in my artsy English elective classes, and also like the Greek life fraternity girls and gals that like my partying side and social side would have. Again, that duality and those two sides of me. So I eventually pivot out of psychology and I switched to the English department. I'm in this major at Florida State called editing, writing, and media. I just want to write. I want to be a writer. During that college path, I got the term journalism in my mind, right? I just told people I love writing, super vague idea. And people are like, oh, you want to be a journalist. You know, you want to talk to people. You want to hear stories, the most important stories, and even share them with the world. And I'm like, okay, yeah. So I want to be a journalist. But I didn't really know what that meant, right? I was just like, okay, editing, writing, and media makes sense, journalist. And my idea of being a blogger and just a writer and writing poetry and stories of people and journaling, it enters phase 2. I want to be a journalist. I go through college. I'll get into that in another story. Lots of lessons there. Anyways, now I'm heading towards the end of college. I'll get into more of my background on hospitality. I'm going to have my mom on an upcoming video too, who's another pattern that I've formed and developed and carried forward subconsciously. You will see when I have my mom on, because she, like me, is also this somehow niche, low-key, criminally underrated, but extremely talented, unknown talent, except in the restaurateur chef world in Tampa. She's known as one of the OGs in the Tampa restaurant and culinary industry from before we even started growing. There was like 4 or 5 of them. She's been on Food Network. Emeril Lagasse's interviewed her. Gwyneth Paltrow's visited her and been in the newspaper. She's, consulted across the world for Michelin concepts and taught at Cordon Bleu and all these different things. And it's funny because she's always avoided the attention and spotlight. Because like me, she hasn't really wanted all of the bullshit that comes with it. She just loves what she does. She's always much more prioritized just doing what she loves, her craft, the qualitative space that she needs to do that. And just somehow these big opportunities have always found her. So it's almost like this niche micro celebrity meme that we use in the online space. but represented offline in my mom. Again, online and offline worlds have more things in common. So I'll dive more into my hospitality and mom side upbringing when she's on. So another stereotype I fall in is like the rebellious Asian daughter who doesn't want to take over the family business, right? Like Mulan. She just honors the family. So after college, with this upbringing and then this idea of journalism, throughout my teens, I always had this idea that I would move to LA after college, live on the West Coast. I need to live somewhere that there's a combination of coastal living and urban city life. I've always felt most me when I can be in the sun by the water. But also, I was raised to explore cities, and there's all the stimulation and life that in urban areas, bopping around restaurants, right? So that coastal urban hybrid has always been my thing. So the only two places to do that in America are Florida or California. So I had that idea that I would move to LA and write for some cool magazine, maybe like Teen Vogue, like when I used to watch The Hills growing up. And that fell under the editing, writing, and media journalism type umbrella, right? As this 2.0 idea of what I do for my career. Through a family connection, my stepdad, Richard, who you're also going to meet in another video, his godson is another little micro celebrity, well-known news anchor. His name's Matt Austin. I meet him towards the end of college. I've done an internship at Tampa Magazine. Now I need another internship as like one of my final college credits. Matt's like, you ever thought about being on the news, being on camera? I guess what I look like and how I talk to people, I think I kept running into this assumption in my social life that I wanted to be on camera, that I wanted attention. And as hard as that might be to believe for whatever reasons about me, I've always avoided it. Maybe I get that from my mom. I don't know. Anyways, he asked me this and I'm like, no. And he's like, you should be. You have the voice for it. You have the looks for it. Let me hook you up with my station in Orlando. So it's final summer of college. And I'm the only news reporter intern who lands this paid internship without any broadcast journalism experience from college or any previous interest in even being a news reporter or a news anchor or a journalist to any real degree, right? So I'm already an outlier here. And I land it for a combination of reasons. One, my connection, right? Shout out to Matt. And number two, my interview. I met the exec producer of the station, Angel, and for reasons I have in a letter from him still, he saw a lot of potential in me and ended up writing a really nice recommendation. This summer is kind of the in-between phase between, school and the real world. This is one of the most stressful summers of my entire life, besides for this past summer, which I'm going to end on in this video. Why was it so fucking stressful? I'm an insecure teenager that doesn't know what she's going to do. I still am shaking off some issues from growing up that I hadn't resolved yet, mental health issues, insecurities. I gotten swept into like big pharma and medical stuff in college, which I'll get into in another video, part of why I'm into the holistic health and natural health stuff. I was put on Lexapro and I was a pothead and I drank and partied a lot. My best phases of those times would always be when I just like really centered on working out and being in the sun and by the water and the fresh air and walks, right? Anyways, summer after college, I'm really stressed out. What am I going to do? How am I going to make money? I'm directionless. So at the time, I'm considering two opportunities at one time. The idea of taking over my mom's excellent restaurant business, right? My mom has 3 concepts currently in Tampa. She has her main restaurant, BT. My mom's name is BT. She goes by BT. It's her nickname, formal name for her Vietnamese name, which nobody can pronounce, right? And restaurant BT is like her main fine dining dinner only concept where it's French Vietnamese, global inspired. Like every year when she travels, she comes back with global inspirations that she comes out with specials and adds things to the menu. But obviously her roots are the French Vietnamese cuisine. And the two branch off concepts are Bistro BT, which when she opens it, I manage it during this phase I'm telling you about, and BT to go, which is just like the quick takeout, Uber Eats, pho, boon bowls, sandwiches, quick grab and go. So there's a super casual takeout one. There's the fine dining dinner only expensive one. And then there's this middle hybrid that is just the bistro, which is like open for lunch and dinner, has takeout too, kind of an elevated casual concept. So she opens it, and the restaurant scene's still not popping off in Tampa yet, like it is right now, which I have a lot of comments about for another video. Again, more patterns with what I've seen in the online and offline worlds, and kind of how I've been able to make some of the predictions that some of you who have been following me for a long time have seen me make. You know, that make me kind of look psychic, right? Maybe there's an element of that. I'll get into that in another video. But it's also just noticing patterns, right? Anyways, during this summer, I keep going on tangents. So I'm working full time in Tampa, managing the bistro. She's off in Europe with Richard on their annual vacation. I'm also commuting a couple hours every week to Orlando for a 20 plus hours a week paid internship with New 6 WKMG for this internship. So between the two cities, I'm working at least 60 hours a week between two jobs. Also kind of vaguely looking out for my brother. And I'm homeless. I'm crashing in friends' guest rooms in both cities, because after I left college, I didn't really have a place to come back to. I didn't have enough money to get my own place yet. Which is another nuance, right? I think that it's easy to look at highlights of my life, whether you know me from Tampa or you see it on social media, of this really privileged, like look at this Airbnb, right? This really privileged, bougie, fine dining upbringing with my mom's designer and, well-knownness, and just assume that I've always been, what is that stereotype that people have said online? Like a trust fund baby. I don't even know what a trust fund is. And while I've always been very, very, very privileged and fortunate when it comes to travel and food and education. Okay. I've always had access to the best of the best meals, my mom has always been a yes man when it comes to those, of fine dining restaurants all over the world, starting to travel globally since I was a kid. And anytime we walk into a bookstore, I have no budget. Mom's is willing to buy any books that I want to read. I was a big reader when I was a kid. I don't read anymore. Another video we'll get into. But outside that, my mom has always been very clear on you need to work hard and earn what you want. Even when I was going from my small Montessori private school to public school, and I started wanting to be that cool girl who goes to the Friday movie nights every Friday, if I wanted $10 for the movie to afford a movie ticket, my mom's like, you better pick up a shift or bust some tables, So there's that hybrid of really privileged access to, meals and travel and these bougie locations that you've seen highlights of my life from, and nothing really being just handed over to me in terms of the life that I want to create for myself. So that summer, I'm homeless. They're not giving me a place to stay. They're not paying any of my bills or giving me opportunities to work. I get really, really burnt out. I'm going to leave a whole separate video for what the journalism internship taught me. Anyways, at the end of the summer, I crash out. I'm gone. I'm burnt out from the restaurant thing, not fulfilled there. Parts of it I love, but overall, I just don't feel like this is the right place for me. I want my own freedom, At the news thing, there's parts of it I love, but overall, it just doesn't resonate with me. I remember breaking down and crying to one of my mom's servers, Christian. Just another ironic pattern. Because I want to mention another Christian later in this video. What up, Christian, for watching this? Who's one of my most recent mentors in the sales world. I'm trying to keep this to a trailer highlight reel. As you can already tell, there's been 100 stories and characters already that I'm just trying to skim the surface of. Anyways, I break down to Christian at the end of the summer, and I'm like, I don't want this, but I feel so bad, In my mom's perspective, it would just be very easy for me to give her a clear yes or no in terms of wanting the business or not. But for me, it felt really heavy, you know? I love my mom. I want her legacy carried forward. At the time, our relationship wasn't as great as it was now, you know? We've gone through a lot, and that's its own story in terms of, like, the mother wound and the challenges and over pathologizing these different things, but also where they have validity. Uh, so the time was really hard to just say no to taking over the family business, but it didn't feel right. And I break down to him and I tell him this. He's like, get out of here. You know, not because he doesn't love my mom. He's working for her, but just validating that for me. I also have a similar conversation with the advertising guys at New Six, which I was spending so much time with them. I didn't realize why I liked them, but they resonated with me so much more than the reporters, which the reporters were great. But something about that, they were just more aligned with me for whatever reason. And they were so surprised that I told them, you know, I want to be a writer. I just ended up here because of my family connection and somebody saying I need to be on camera. And I never forget them looking at each other and being like, just taking a special interest in me. They never met reporting interns that, first of all, went and vibed and bonded with them in this way when I should have been like seizing all the time I could downstairs with the camera guys and the reporters, but also who was just a writer and really didn't care about being seen. This is another pattern that will echo years later in the online world. In some way, without them telling me to like turn down my opportunities in the news, they just validate that side of me and it feels okay. And I remember the advertising director looks at me and goes, whatever you do, don't stop writing. I emailed him years later. This is one of the first standout times that shows just how important it is to, if you notice potential in somebody, how meaningful it can be to just validate and let them know that you think that about them. And how resonance is such a good compass. Even when you have no idea what the hell you're doing, and it makes no logical sense to turn down the opportunities, you have no money, you have nowhere to live, you have no job, you're fresh out of college, everybody's judging you. All of your friends are taking off into real jobs and whatever. You have all of these opportunities and lucrative chances handed over on a silver platter, and you're still saying no just for the simple reason it doesn't sit right in your soul. Now, I have no reason to believe I'm not crazy at this point. It doesn't make any logical sense to turn these things down and not at least get some experience and make some money. But I turned both down. I turned down the restaurant business and I turned down the news reporting thing. And I take the lessons from both of those. So then my new game plan starts. Behind the scenes of this, I am still musing and writing and processing and documenting all my life experiences online and writing on Twitter. In high school, back in 2013 at Senior Notables, I got quite literally a trophy that said Miss Twitter, class of 2013. But at the time, like, it was just, I mean, I really didn't deserve a trophy, right? All I was doing was bitching about my high school boyfriend and posting lyrics that resonated and just, it was always my like public journal type thing. Now, this is before the concept of money Twitter, which some of you know, was even a thing. And my next phase of my game plan is screw this, you know, I don't want these opportunities. I'm going to do what feels right to me. I'm rebelling a little, you know, against my family, against society, against success. I'm going to step back down from all these opportunities. I'm going to go back into serving and bartending outside my family business so I can make money, save up. I want my own apartment. I want my own place. And also in hospitality, you know, give myself the time and schedule freedom to work nights and weekends or whatever in hospitality to pay the bills and make money. And then during the days, I will focus on carving out my path in the online world as a creative and a writer until I can make money off that in the online world. I know I want to write online, share my story, share my voice, and I know I want to work location independent where I can work anywhere there's Wi-Fi. So I do that. And, you know, I'm working different jobs as server and bartender and being really well known in my city. People are constantly asking me like, why are you taking over the family business? I'm dealing with a lot of guilt and shame there, but I'm just rebelling too. So from 2017 to 2018, leaving college, rebelling, going back down into serving and bartending to carve my own path. This is a whole chapter of its own. I work a nightlife job at a place called Franklin Manor back in the day that I had some interesting stories from it too, and lots of characters that I met there. I work a couple different things. I sell beer for Big Storm. I run events and programming for a hospitality company called Salt Block and Tampa Museum of Art downtown. I end up at this restaurant on Swan in Hyde Park Village. That's my longest hospitality gig outside of working for my mom's restaurant business. I worked there for about 3 years. Now, fast forward, it's been about 3 years. Now we're in 2020. We can all relate to 2020 being a time where on micro and macro levels, on individual and collective levels, and local, American, and also global, international levels, the whole world got dragged down to its knees. Like, everything stopped. Dylan, who now owns a restaurant called Pulpo in St. Pete, you should check it out. He's also one of the mentors that I want to give a shout out to. He was my favorite hospitality manager ever in my life. Shout out to 3 of my best friends of that era as well, Keith, Anne-Marie, and Sammy Lamb. I remember I'm getting trained at On Swan one day, and they pair me with this goofy, tall, white guy who looks like Pete Davidson. And I'm like, this guy's fucking goofy looking. Like, why are they putting me with him? No offense, Will. Anyway, he's really charismatic, and I kind of adore him, even though I'm like, what the hell is this? He's working the line. He's like, yeah, sometimes I get so sweaty, I put like maxi pads in my armpits. I'm like, what? And he's like, oh yeah, I just got back from Europe with my girlfriend, Weston. He trains me, and that's the first time I hear of Weston. Weston and I joke about this all the time. She heard of me through Will. I would see her in passing sometimes, hanging out with Will between shifts. He lived right down the street in the same neighborhood. I look up Weston on Instagram, and somewhat of like a travel influencer on Instagram. I'm not really platonically attracted. And remember me, I'm still very much that starving artist archetype at this point. I'm like, ew, this person is so image-centric, so performative. She seemed like she's just like a try hard judging her because I'm like, oh, you probably only want to be my friend because you think that I want your man or something. So between the online image and then the offline assumption of why she wants to be my friend, I'm like avoiding her friendship. Fast forward, she'll finally get me to hang out. We'll go out to lunch, we'll address everything, and I just fall in love with her. I get to know this offline real life version of her, and it's nothing like she looks on Instagram. And she's self-aware of how she reps herself on Instagram, and she narrates that to me. We have this huge heart to heart, and I'm like, wow, you're just making me look so dumb for not wanting to be your friend. And we bond, and all of a sudden, click. Fast forward a little bit. Also bring me into this very strong, lifelong friend group they have that originates in both Tampa and Miami. There's a bunch of different characters in there. Anyways, 2020 comes. All the restaurants shut down. I've been totally wrapped up in hospitality life to where during the days that I was supposed to be carving out my online life, I'm drinking after work with the hospitality squad, and then I'm passing out and I'm waking up to work a double. And the cycle just repeats for years and years. And before you know it, I'm not really making any progress with carving out my own path online. But 2020 puts me on my ass and really has me confront, like, listen, you originally set out to do this so that you could do this, and you haven't made any progress. I need to sit on my ass and focus on my online writing career self because I can't make any money from hospitality anymore. Like, I don't even have a choice. I get swept into this pattern of just like partying and having fun and not being productive, just like I did in hospitality. I'm still posting on Twitter. I was more of a lurker than a serious poster or writer in that 2012 to 2020 decade. But I still managed to make some connections that are now very well known. I would post about self-development and lessons and health, and maybe that's why I drifted into that world. But anyways, the first 2 coaches / mentors / online public figures that I make friends with from this online world are, and I have a really old, rough podcast episode with them on my channel that there's so many things I would change about. Ed Latmore and Alexander Cortez. Ed Latmore, he grew up in the hood. He was a boxer. He writes a lot about life lessons, and he's so wise. He's that fun writer who has like a sense of humor. He makes racist jokes like I do, but he has a heart of gold. And he writes about life, which I love. And he kind of has this masculine influence that I am drawn to. And I'm a big fan of his work. And I think I'm replying and following his stuff on all platforms. I remember at the time, Alexander's banner said, mentality equals physicality. And that resonated with me because I remember the phases that I felt best and like most aligned with myself through all the party cycles and times my mental health went in the shitter. I couldn't help but notice the pattern is like when I was working out, my mind was so much clearer and my mental health was so much better. Duh, now, right? But I remember Alexander's stuff resonated with me for, just pointing out that simple connection between mind and body. And he's also posting a lot of like masculine influence in his philosophical musings, and he's very cultured. So Alexander Cortez and Ed Latmore are my first two friends in this space. I follow them. I'm replying to them. They're still on their come up. Now they're huge online. I remember asking them like why they followed me back or why they even responded to me, and for different reasons, but both of them in some way touched to like, oh, who's this like girl? Like I'm very much speaking to men over here. Like what is this chick doing? And they said something about like, this doesn't look like a groupie and it just doesn't look like an e-girl or a hoe. Like, you really seem interested. So that's interesting. Hello. And then I seemed nice, I guess, or whatever. They gave me the time of day. Alexander taught me that term ghost mentor, where somebody's not like formally meeting with you every week as your mentor, but they're teaching you things and they're part of your self-development. Those two guys originally absolutely part of this online coaching world. The first person I met offline from the online world. I'm old enough to remember when they told us not to talk to strangers in the internet world. The first person I rebelled was this black guy from the hood, Ed Latmore. He was in Tampa. We linked up for a meal. He gave me advice about life, about writing, and I was a really insecure version of me at the time. Years later, I'll meet Alexander Cortez in Miami, and that's a great time too. Anyways, I started posting online more. Somewhere around this time. Kind of alchemizing and trying to integrate and make sense of my thinking as I'm learning these lessons and I'm going through my life, and then I'm figuring out how those all play a role together in my self-development through my writing. The first tweet I ever posted that got a lot of attention, I wouldn't say viral, but maybe viral for the time, was I remember paying a lot of attention to relationship content, which I didn't view as at odds with self-development content, because we learn so much about ourselves through our relationships, right? Our platonic, professional, and romantic. I think around this time is when I also start paying attention to Pat Stedman, who you've seen multiple episodes of him on my channel too. He is also one of my ghost mentors. Whenever I talk about like the concept of comfort and desire, he's the originator of that. So during that time, I kept seeing this love relationship content about, oh, I want somebody to complete me. Even before everybody was ragging on like boss bitch types and like that stereotype got blown up, I've just always been doing my own thing. Like since I was a kid, I was very much encouraged to be independent, figure it out for myself, isolate during my writing, and get a little lost and figure out my way back, make my own money. So even though I had this really big, idealistic, poetic, romanticizing, yearning version of me, this concept of, I want somebody to complete me, it didn't fully resonate for me. Every girl wants to find the love of her life, and I would write about that, but that concept didn't resonate with me. So I tweeted something along the lines of, unpopular opinion. Really popular way to like frame your tweet. I don't want to complete you. I want to compliment you. I want you to be complete on your own. It pops off. I think Pat's one of the ones that shares it. Alexander Cortez shares it. The whole manosphere, which is this online part of the internet that is just very bullish on the concept of strong masculine leadership, it blows off. And I'm getting a bunch of validation. And this is where a lot more people find me. A lot of more of the big talking heads and thought leaders in that space bump into this random chick who just happens to be speaking to their perspective of things in a world where a lot of women are starting to reject that idea of the man being the leader and the strong one. And because I've always had this kind of edge and abrasive sense of humor, and I went through a really strong, hardcore tomboy phase in life, and I always had these friendships with guys and always had these co-ed friendship groups, there was something about masculine self-development that always resonated with me way, way more than feminine self-development. I touched on this in a conversation with Pat on my channel. It resonated a lot, ironically, more with how I was raised. You could argue my mom, the good thing that she passed to me are what are categorically considered in this space masculine traits. Work hard, integrity, honor, independence, accountability. So all of these masculine coaches kind of find me. I remember right after that tweet pops off, this woman, who's also an online coach in that space, slides into my DMs and just starts chatting it up. So now we're still around the 2020 era. I'm really lost. And you guys can't picture this version of me at the time, but I have old clips from it that I'm going to share in upcoming videos. You can just see it in my face. Like I wasn't as healthy. both physically and mentally. I'm also really, really, really anxious. I'm super insecure. I can't address elephants. Like I'm almost too assertive and too abrasive and very confrontational and very outspoken now, to the extent where people can't imagine this version of me. But I was really scared to say what I thought, besides for in this public journal writing atmosphere. I was scared to voice things to, guys I liked. I was scared to say, hey, I like you. It caused me enormous anxiety to tell my mom, hey, I don't want this. It caused me enormous anxiety to address things with friends. Like, hey, this is just where I'm at, blah, blah, blah. Like, I was just such an anti-address the elephant person. So even if you watched me for years repeat the importance of speaking your truth and addressing conflict and addressing elephants, whether it's with yourself or with other people, that is a made-from-scratch quality. The only real place I've always felt just completely free in my self-expression was the page, the writing, the public journal. So when this woman reaches out to me, that's where I'm at. Also, shout out Jack Colson. Jack Colson is an online health/fitness trainer from the primordial times too. Anyways, I get this idea that, hey, I'll be a copywriter. I learn in this online space about the concept of people making money online. Didn't even know what copywriting was. All I knew was it was a way to make money online, location independent like I wanted, using what I wanted to do, writing. So now my idea evolves from like journalism blogger to I'll be a copywriter. I'll be a freelance copywriter. I entered this phase of like only being interested in men who are geographically inconvenient. My friend Nick Savage on Twitter now, he's not online anymore, but he's such a good writer and artist based in Amsterdam. That's for another story. Shout out. He called me out for this later. That was like summer 2023 that we finally met in person. I also met Fury, who's also another online person. It's really obvious to everybody but me, I guess, but I don't really realize that I'm doing a couple things. Now I'm trying to find my way to being a copywriter. I'm pitched this kind of life/relationship coaching from this woman who's reached out to me after my viral post about complementarity. I start to form this real fascination that I'm saying in every inch of this video about like, complementing aspects versus opposing or completing. And in the romantic area of my life, I'm subconsciously repeating this cycle of distance, right? Like I just happen to keep only being interested in men that I probably could never make it work with. This is a very early, important chapter to touch on about my earliest battle with shadow. I like the seeds of shadow work. I didn't realize that I was repeating a pattern from that time ever since then to now. We're talking 5 years ago. You don't get to decide that there's no smug final place of knowledge and self-development and wisdom, right? There's infinite levels. It's not school. You don't get to learn a life lesson and then never be tested on the material again in life. If you're more the spiritual type, you might call these your karmic lessons, right? If you're just in self-development space, you just might call this, what you don't repeat, what you don't change, you're choosing. Patterns repeat, good and bad ones. This past summer, which was really hard, and I'm gonna get to, I realized how important the shadow work and the seeds of what happened with this woman that was my mentor and coach, how relevant they still are. I was subconsciously still playing out some of the things that hurt me during that phase, and I haven't really realized it. Anyways, she takes me under her wing. We do some one-on-one work. I enter her women's group. I make really good friends with another well-known person's wife at the time. So we're all in this women's group together, and we're all trying to self-develop. And this female mentor and coach, we're getting really close. What was never pointed out to me by her, and that I realized later, was a concept called maternal transference. Shout out to Miss Amy. Miss Amy is my childhood best friend's mom, who, my longest friendship from when I was like 3 years old. is Alexandra. So we've been friends for like 27 years. She just got engaged. And her mom was a therapist, and that primordial influence of me getting into all this stuff. And later, after me and this female mentor you could call it a falling out. After that, I go and I talk to Miss Amy about it, because Miss Amy is the only other like female therapy life coach type person that I know, and I trust her. And she brings up this concept of maternal transference to me, which is basically, my mother wound acting out through this female mentor, wanting her approval, wanting to make her proud in certain ways, which on one level is natural, right? For a mentor, you want them to validate what you're doing. You want them to approve. You want to make them happy. But it can be to an inappropriate degree. Maternal transference, right? Like you're almost transferring what should only be a relationship between you and your mother to another woman. And anyways, the female mentor hooks me up with an opportunity to learn more about copywriting. So I'm learning about that. Outside our, mentor-mentee dynamic with that group, we also have our personal relationship. And then as a third element to our relationship, we form this professional, dynamic where I'm now given the opportunity to do my first digital economy paid gig, copywriting. And I love it, right? Like I'm now, outside of just posting my own thoughts on Twitter, now I can use that to handle her email marketing and practice my skills and learn them and sharpen them. So I start, and she's paying me. It's my first gig and I have no experience, so she's only paying me like something like $30. I'm so happy because, she's giving me the opportunity and I'm getting to practice my skills and I'm writing about something I love. We reached this point one day where I had been really late and lacking punctuality with delivering her some of the emails, and she addresses it with me constructively, and I'm like, shit, I need to tighten up with that. I remember this week where everything got a little funky. It's not lost on me that people who knew we had a relationship and then didn't, and saw that publicly happening online, could get wind our Twitter antics and just being able to deduce in the online Hollywood social scene that, we were openly very much a fan of each other, and then all of a sudden we weren't. So here's my side of the story. So she's addressed that I've been a day or two late on getting her these email marketing materials for her review so she can post it on time. So this week I get it to her 1 to 2 days early. And I'm so excited. Of course, I'm journaling about it because I had so much guilt and shame when she points this out, right? I have this maternal transference. I want to make her proud. I get it to her early, and we get on a call together to review this email. She's been loving the emails I've been sending out. I've been increasing her engagement rate and her subscribers. She adjusts my commission from the email marketing thing a week or two after I start taking it over. Which in hindsight, it's really weird to reduce someone's pay when they start doing a good job for you. Whatever rationale she told me at the time, she addressed it, she explained it, and I was like, yeah, cool. I didn't know anything. So you can't really honestly say that I didn't consensually agree to that. Anyways, we spend like 7 hours together going over the edits she wants to make to this email. And I remember feeling on my side like, what is going on here? Like, all of the edits she wants to make are extremely tedious and micromanaging in my personal opinion, but I'm not voicing that, right? I'm just trying to respect, and I know I'm the insecure wrong one here. And I keep applying the edit she wants, but then it's just not enough. And we go through this loop over and over for like 7 hours, and I'm getting exhausted. And in my gut, which I don't trust at all at the time, I'm like, I feel like, either something in the email I wrote is triggering something unresolved in her. Maybe it's hormonal. Or maybe she's tired because she's working a lot. It's got to be one of these possibilities because I still trust her and like believe she has my best interest at heart. But there's just this weird vibe between us now. But no matter what my theories or opinions are about it, we reached this like 7-hour time working together. And I'm like, listen, I have a dinner shift coming up in an hour or two. And I'm really drained. Are you okay if we resume this tomorrow so I can just take an hour or two to go to the gym before my dinner shift? And I make sure that's okay with her before I leave. And she's like, yeah. You saw the screenshots from that. Because I'm like terrified right now. I'm like, so remember, I'm still terrible at addressing elephants and like standing up for what I want and need. Anyways, I go off, I work my dinner shift. That night in the bathroom, I check my phone during my serving shift. And I mentioned this to one of my coworkers. I'm like, my mentor left me this really long, weird voice note, and I don't really know what's going on. She addressed it. Something didn't sit right with her on her side. So now I'm like, oh shit, we got to address something. So the next day we address it, and she voices to me in messages I still have something along the lines of, it didn't feel like you care and the work is a priority because you just decided to go work out when we were working on this really important newsletter. I'm like, wait, I spent 7 hours going back and forth with you. We were kind of circling the same points. And I asked you if it was okay, if I can just go, in my brain, it was like, that I need this workout stuff for my mental health. And like, I'm working out this with you for 7 hours and I have a dinner shift in 2 hours. Like, anyways, she's really spun out about that. And I'm trying to resolve it with her, but it's just not working because I'm like trying to make these points. And she's like, you're not understanding me. And she's right. I didn't agree with that. That was getting dark. Let me turn on the light. So we get in this heated conversation. We just can't find agreement. My gut is like screaming, emergency alarms. And I don't really believe my own side of the argument logically because I just trust that she's wiser and more intelligent than me. All I know is something's not right here. So while we address this issue of like what happened with editing that email, I just voiced to her, listen, I don't feel comfortable working with you anymore. I've been trying to reason with you. So I think it's best if we just go our separate ways. I'm so sorry. And I'm going to stop working for you and writing the email. I'm going to leave the women's group. And I just don't want to really be together anymore. She's really insistent that we resolve the problem instead of run away from it. I'm like, okay, fair. Maybe that's my relationship problem. So over the next week, like 5 to 7 days, we go through multiple conversations. We spend hours, end up arguing. We spend some time on the phone. She screams. We go through another conversation where a woman from the group is asked to be like our mediator. And I'm like, okay, I agree to that. And the mediator feels like she's taking her side and I can't really get my side heard here. So that doesn't work out either. Finally, we get to the point where like a week has passed of going back and forth and hours and hours and hours of trying to resolve this problem between us. And we just can't. I'm like, listen, I'm still arriving at the same conclusion. I want us to separate. I don't want this to cause any friction or conflict in the women's group that we've all built this really safe, trusting bond in. How do you advise I bring it to the group? And she says, as any noble person would advise, just tell them the truth. At this point, I know enough to know that the ladies look to me in a respectable way. They love my mission statement that I shared with the group. They love the wisdom I'm starting to cultivate with the group. Even trying to encourage me to like lead the group for some calls and practice leadership. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm talking about. So I know that it's going to do something in some way in terms of the trust they have in our mentor to watch me just leave. And I'm really protective of that not happening. All I know at this point is like, I don't want to be here and I don't want it to mess with anybody else's life or this group. I just want to leave. I want my freedom. Like, let me out of here. Anyways, I bring it to the group. We're all in this big group chat. And of course, as predicted, nobody's very comfortable with it. Everybody's like, what is going on? Why are you leaving? This is so sudden. My mentor goes back on what she tells me one-on-one, which is address it, be honest, and tell the truth, and we'll just part ways however. And it feels like I'm just being ganged up on, right? Anyways, the group starts demanding all these answers, and I'm just like, listen, there's no reason for me to interfere with y'all's relationship when you guys have built here. Please just let me go and don't ask me for any more details. And everybody starts calling me crazy. Most of them. There's 1 or 2 exceptions that I won't name. Just being like, wow, it really seems like you're doing our female mentor wrong. And making very painful accusations of her. You must be going crazy. This must be your mental health, blah, blah. I'm like, It felt like gaslighting, but at the time I'm like, maybe I am wrong. I don't know. I should just let me out of here. I don't know what's right or wrong. Just let me out of here. I'm trying to minimize the damage and like everybody wants answers. This pattern becomes really relevant in the future too. At the time, I'm also happened to be in a long distance romantic dating situation with another well-known person, a guy in the online coaching space, who is the only person I'm talking to about this situation outside of the privacy of my female mentors group. It's not only because of our romantic relationship and us telling each other and opening up to each other about everything that's going on in our lives at the time. He happens to be working with her too. I open up to him. He's there for me. I'm like, okay, maybe I'm not crazy. Right before I leave the group too, in this breakdown phase, I think back to right before that email happened, there was also a moment in the group where I start taking up more space and getting more attention. I was questioned for not voicing opportunities because we're all supposed to be bringing all of our dating and relationship experiences and thoughts to this group to work through them. And I remember feeling a really weird vibe in the group conversation when I'm like, yeah, I get effed out. I don't really reciprocate interest. Is that a problem with me? Maybe it's something wrong with me. I don't bring that up here because I figure it's not worth talking about. I brought up all the situations that I reciprocate interest and there's some sort of dynamic going on to get you guys' advice, but these situations are just opportunities that haven't turned into anything. I remember the fact that I was even getting opportunities in that way. It felt a little awkward. Understandably, when we're all a bunch of lonely women early in our self-development journey, that can be a little annoying to hear. And some of the women start making comments like, oh man, I need to move to Tampa where all the guys are. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. And I remember feeling really, really weird there. And then this week long of conflict resolution attempts, and then being embarrassed and feeling like I was being ganged up on in this group dynamic where I've been the only space in my life where I open up this much and trust this much. I feel like everybody is just betraying me. Now, the reason this is relevant is because it was betrayal. As you guys know, I have played a coaching role for other men and women ever since this, and any client can attest to this. You are not here to take care of my feelings. You are not here to manage my boundaries. You are not here to agree with everything that I say. I'm not here to make your decisions for you. And anything that you don't want me to use as inspiration in my content or voice, let me check in with you during our sessions to make sure that you feel like this is private and respected and confidential, and that you can openly get mad at me, yell at me, cry at me, get triggered, abandon me, quit, disagree with me. And it's really important that the space between us has that culture. And the reason is because I don't feel like I got those rights with that female mentor. As everyone in that group witnessed, she ended up using all of my deepest wounds against me. One of those screenshots, explicitly, she goes, "You are being like your mother. My mom and I aren't getting along." If you're a mental health professional, I can't believe that you would navigate conflict so immaturely and use somebody's deepest triggers that they haven't healed yet against them just because they're leaving and they're trying to do it as peacefully as possible. So I start speaking up for myself and causing some issues, right? And I say, no, I'm not crazy. I leave that. I never wanted it to be a public thing. I didn't really care about ruining somebody's reputation. Even if I hate them, you can really ruin somebody's life by saying negative things. I knew she had a reputation. I knew she had clients. Like, I really didn't want to have to carry the responsibility for my opinion or experiences or biases messing up her life in any way. It wasn't even that I liked her or respected her anymore. It was just, I don't want that responsibility for what happens to you in your life. So I never say anything and I just carry on with my life. I leave that group. It was really painful, but I also felt really empowered after leaving it, voicing things for myself and just being out on my own again. Because every time I go through one of these really challenging cycles, just like the summer after college, leaving my family business, and now this group that is part of my shadow work, there's also always this really powerful state and season I enter where I just feel so good and so great and powerful for doing what I felt was good against all external opinions and what other people thought and what makes sense and all these external pressures. So I feel really powerful. I'm out free again. And I'm still with this idea of, I'm going to be a copywriter. So, next really important chapter. So with this idea that I'll be a copywriter and I'm still in the online Twitter space, and a little bit more confident, with a little bit more pain that gets buried in me too, that becomes really relevant as a pattern I subconsciously recycle over the next coming years, that I realized this summer. I go back into the Twitter world. Now money Twitter is like a concept. Money Twitter refers to just like all these digital entrepreneurs, marketers, sales guys, e-com guys, drop shipping. This digital economy of Wi-Fi money is starting to form. You know, Ed and Alexander are still on the rise. There's more characters that I'm becoming mutuals with in money Twitter. You know, shout out to Vic, Ginger, Jack. I'll give more shout outs as I think of them. But I'm just continuing to make friends in this online space. And I have this idea, I want to be a copywriter. And one of the accounts I follow is this guy named Oliver Canton. And at the time, all I knew was that he copywrote. I didn't really know that he was like such a entrepreneur. I didn't know what an offer was. I didn't know anything about business or online business. I had followed him during my time of being like, oh, I want to be a copywriter. Let me follow some copywriting accounts. Now we're at like the tail end of 2020, I think. And he posts on Twitter something along the lines of, you know, my wife and I have escaped Canada because of the pandemic, and we've migrated to Florida, and I'm looking for a personal assistant. And, you know, remote is cool, but if anybody knows anybody in Florida, let me know. And I see that post, and I'm in Florida, so I'm like, oh, that's me. And I'm feeling a little powerful. I'm like, I need to find my next opportunity to learn. And I've never historically been like an outbound person, but every so often I'll just get like some random inspiration. I'll be like, yo, and I'll pull up and there's no thinking involved. And this has been a huge issue in my personal life in some ways. Friends have addressed this with me. Like, if I don't reach out to you and I don't make plans with you and I don't reach out, I'm never going to hear from you or never going to see you. And it's like, oh shit, yeah. Because I just kind of default to this isolated, Trina's up in her own world at home version of me. But if you catch me at the right time, I'll go out and be social and you'll see this really extremely social butterfly version of me with all these friends. And it's hard to understand that both of those sides of me exist and show up really, really strong. You know, when I'm with you, it's like my whole world revolves around you. And because it does in that time. But the same thing with myself. When I'm isolated and alone and on my creative, selfish, arrogant, like self-focused state, my attention is fully on me. And my life has kind of been an oscillation between those two extremes. You can see it in me telling you about my social versus introverted self. You can see it in that balancing of my work life, creative writing and working for somebody else, self. And again, the primordial foreshadowing of this integration pattern. Anyways, I hit up Oliver. Oh, he also mentioned something along the lines of like, I'm willing for there to be like an internship element of this personal assistance if you want to learn about marketing or copywriting or whatever. And so I'm like, oh, that's me. So this is an opportunity to make money. This is an opportunity to learn and develop my skills in copywriting. So I DM him and he's like, all right, we schedule a Zoom call. I hop on Zoom and he introduces me to his wife. And they're at some Airbnb like an hour or two away from Tampa. And, you know, we all meet each other and we're vibing. And I adore them, fall in love with them immediately. And we're like, all right, he's hired a bunch of people in his life. So I guess he, for some reason, gives me a chance. So I drive out there and to meet them in person. And I remember they make charcuterie and we sit by the pool. And, you know, I'm in love with his wife is like Vietnamese like me and like has some similar things in common from her upbringing. So we bond in our own way. And then Oliver and I are bonding in our like money Twitter way. And I'm learning from him and I'm bonding with her. And it's funny because in hindsight, it became very clear that almost like them as a couple also represented two sides of me. This pattern keeps showing up, right? Oliver with his online digital entrepreneur coaching world, Twitter, creative genius, ranting self. That's an element of me. And then Han is the other side of me that's just like, you know, Asian, Vietnamese, introverted, likes to live in her own little world, likes to avoid attention, likes to be behind the scenes. So he's like more like the sales marketing front end guy. And she's like more like the operations behind the scenes builder. And they have this nice yin and yang reflection of Trina that I don't know that any of us knew yet until we got to like know each other more. And they also have that nice complementarity, just like my first viral tweet or whatever that I've pinned at the time when we meet, in their relationship. So that's interesting, right? Anyways, I end up like staying in their guest room for at least a couple days, staying over. We like smoke hookah, and they're teaching me, and we're hanging out. We take some tequila shots at some point. We also go to the gym together. Like we do all the things. We're like working, we're helping, we're living, we're vibing, and I'm so excited. So I enter this phase where I am Oliver's assistant, and during this chapter, I meet more characters from this online coaching scene, right? Petey Mangan, John Constas, Scope with Paul, Soulbra. Now my focus is a little bit shifted more towards like the health, wellness, holistic element side of things. Oliver has scaled Petey Mangan's coaching offer, and they're partners. I go to some offline meetups in Miami around the same time because I have those friends there to crash with, and then I have some offline Twitter friends that I find out are based there. I meet like Luke Fitz, Peyton, who else from that time? Oh, Kata. Met during that season. I'm learning what an offer is. I'm learning about copy. Trying to understand what even marketing even is. It reminds me of one of my only classes in college that I had been surprised to enjoy was my advertising class. Because I had just this idea that advertising and marketing, again, was just like trying to take my money and just trying to get attention. And it repelled me. So I was surprised in school to like that advertising class because it was really about human nature and psychology and creativity, which are things I love. And I didn't view those things as together. And also the advertising group at the news job, right? So then I also realized, Oliver is very much teaching me about advertising through copywriting and marketing. And I like it. I resonate and I vibe with this. So now it's like, I don't have this demonic perception of it like some of the offline, like boomer brick and mortar world still has. I'm outgrowing it and I'm learning about it like behind the scenes in the most way. And it becomes very irrefutable that whether or not you think marketing is important or not, you're always being influenced by marketing. You don't become a fan of a brand or an account without you being exposed to their marketing material, whether or not you are conscious of that. Oh my God, I remember using Notion at this point and I was like not organizing it well. And I don't know whether it was like them being understanding of me not being organized enough at the time to be a personal assistant and or them meaning it when they said, listen, you're too smart to just be an assistant. We have an idea. They create this role for me where I can be taking the path to handling operations for them. Oliver's wife is like, she is such a G when it comes to operations. Like, it's insane. Like, I've seen behind the scenes of it. After learning about marketing copywriting element of things, now I'm transitioning to a bigger role and opportunity they created for me. And I'm under Han's wing learning how to take over operations. They also pay me enough to where I quit my hospitality gig. So now it's 2021 and I'm making enough online to achieve my milestone of working location independent. And they gave that to me, right? I'm just like so in love with working with them and learning from them. And I'm commuting to like go to the Airbnb and staying over with them a lot. And hospitality isn't really as much the same. And I feel like I've outgrown it, And so I leave that behind. And now no longer hospitality, Trina. So now I'm working fully remote. It's 2021. And I learned how to do operations. Oliver and Han are getting ready for their next season of life when their marriage of like having a baby and stuff. And I'm going to take over operations so Han can focus on being a mom. Anyways, fast forward. As you move through your come up in your career, you start to learn things about yourself if you're paying attention and paying attention to what sort of things energize you and what kind of things drain you. And as we all in this online space know, and for those of you who don't, you tend to not be both types. You tend to either be more of the talk to people, sales, attention, front-end marketing type, or more of the behind-the-scenes operational type. It gives you more energy and it's more fulfilling for you to solve the problems of building and operations and structure and systems. Or it gives you more energy to be like front-facing and talking to people and whatever. It's a minority of types who equally enjoy doing both. And at the time, all I knew was I want to make money on the location independent and I want to have the freedom to write. So now I have the location independent lucrativeness and through this operations role I'm learning. And again, I enter this cycle of alongside that, I want to be writing. But I get comfy again. And I repeat the cycle again. And I am not really focused on my writing or building my brand or whatever it is. I'm still avoiding attention and still hiding and just learning. My camera was dying. I put this portable charger thing on it so I can still have the microphone plugged in. Continue on this yap. And I'm going to eat for this next chapter because now it's been like 3 or 4 hours of me yapping. I'm going to edit out most of this so you don't have to listen to me yap too much. But as you can see, there are a lot of stories. I'm hungry. It almost reminds me of like, imagine you're dating somebody and you start, you're really committed and invested in them. And then all of a sudden you just start drifting and like looking at a lot of other guys. That analogy almost reminds me of what started happening in hindsight with my role with them. Because, we've all agreed that I'm going to like take over operations. They're going to start family. And I wasn't really conscious or aware of it at the time. Very low conscientiousness of me. But I start getting curious and interested in other opportunities outside my operations role with them. And we're all close and we're friends. We can talk about anything. And we have a great dynamic. But I just remember this chapter. I'm in the operations role and I'm starting to get curious about other opportunities in the online space. I voice this to them. And it doesn't really work for what they need at that time. But they are like, okay. And they encourage me to go off and like go figure out what I want. And this is the part that I think a lot of people can connect with and resonate with, where you don't really know what you want yet. A vague idea of wanting to work location independent, make enough money to do that, and have enough time to write and do my own thing, those needs were being fully met and gifted to me. And I was working with people I very much loved and enjoyed. The operations type role was just draining me. Like I just wake up, I had a really chill schedule, and I just hated it. And there was no reason I hated it. I had all the support in the world. I had the best trainer in the world. I was, I held a hand every step of the way. I was getting paid well, like all this stuff. And there was zero reason, again, to leave this opportunity. So again, repeating the cycle, right? Leaving a great opportunity, not really having good reasons to, and just knowing it didn't sit right with me. Now, in hindsight, you can start to appreciate, and I've talked about this with them, I thought at the time, like, my introverted, behind-the-scenes paid self could just be to that operations role. But I think for work, just like I had experience in hospitality, it became much clearer to me that that was supposed to be what I leaned into for work. This is one of the first early signs that I was going to be more of the sales marketing side of things in terms of what I wanted to do for work. None of us knew that yet. I didn't realize that I would become miserable doing operations. Otherwise, I probably would have told them. And they knew I was still figuring out who the hell I was. And unfortunately, they had to pay the cost for that. So anyways, I got back on my own and leave that opportunity. That was so healing to me, that I could leave. And Han and I, she's like my big sister, right? Like we addressed that. Hey, I still love you and I still want you in my life, even though this didn't work out. I'm like, oh my God. And that might not be a big deal to her that she said that to me, but because of this previous arc that I had experienced, it caused me so much anxiety for this to happen. And the fact that she just said that to me, it was like, it felt like it was a big step in healing my mother wound, even though she's not my mother, right? It was just like a feminine energy in my life that understood and cared. And it was just like this unconditional love, no matter how much of a huge inconvenience I had just become to her. So we stay friends, whatever. I go off on my own. Entire webs spun out from this era of working for Ollie and Han. One of those threads led to Daniel Fazio. Some of you know him as Cold Email Wizard, the OGs of cold email, which is obviously a huge marketing tool. famous online. Remember during my time working with Oliver, he pointed out, hey, do you know a cool email wizard? And I was like, yeah, we're mutuals on Twitter. And sometimes we reply to each other's shit. He seems funny. He seems cool. And he points out, yo, he lives in Tampa. And I was like, oh, no way. He's like, yeah, you guys should meet up. So I reached out to Daniel and I'm like, yo, we should meet. And he's like, fuck yeah. Everybody wants to know how me and Daniel became friends. So now we're transitioning between the working for Ali and Han era to the working for Daniel Fazio / Cold Email Wizard / Client Ascension, which is now very renowned as a coaching community that scales agencies. We're between those two chapters, but there's a very significant chapter in between. We'll get into that next. In this kind of hiatus between big operations role for Oliver and Han and before my era that a lot of people know me online from of working as the community manager of Client Ascension, when I had like less than 50 people and now I had like hundreds and hundreds of agencies it's scaled. Between those two roles for bigger entities, I was out here in the wild again, right? Turning down big opportunities to go off and focus on my own stuff and figuring out what the hell that even means. So now that I know I don't want to do an operations role and I want to focus on my own thing, but I'm still kind of fumbling it, I stumble across something with the concept of sales. I'm seeing some stuff in the online space. Chen, another shout out to Vision in Sales on Twitter. He's not really active anymore, but I also met him during that chapter. I remember the concept of sales being at the forefront of my mind. Because him and Oliver would always talk about sales. And I thought of how I grew up in the restaurant business and I always, was good at yapping to people in that way and like selling high-end bottles of liquor and stuff like that. And so now I have this idea, sales. Also, another shout out, life and health coach and like body weight champion, Zach Hummel, is also very famous in the online world. Zach and I also became friends in this previous season because during the 2020 pandemic, my family and I didn't really disagree in terms of how to navigate the pandemic. I was very firm on wanting to be a hippie with my body and not take this, I don't know how much I should mention of this on YouTube because I don't want to get banned, but we had very big, nobody's stupid. You can watch this and assume, and some of you know, we just disagreed on that. And my parents were very firm in their beliefs and I was very firm on mine. So for that year, 2020, because of our conflicting beliefs and us all trying to look out for our health, we didn't spend Thanksgiving together. And I had just gone to this meetup that's really fun, like down to earth, nature loving, hippie Jesus vibe, spunky, soulful personalities. Zach Hummel, that I also followed in this world, he was having a meetup in Florida on the beach. I was also friends with Father at the time and Banana. I met them from the Twitter world. I'm dropping so many names. Like most of the story won't make sense to you unless you know who these people are. So this is mainly for that. My 1,000 true fan squad, I guess you could call it. You guys more feel like mentors and colleagues. Anyways, I go to this Florida meetup. I meet Zach. We hit it off immediately. He tells me I'm vibe. We do breath work to the sunrise. And we do a little workout on the beach. And we're all vibing. We take pictures. It's still on my Instagram. And I become friends with him. Honestly, Zach, I didn't really realize how big of a deal you are. He's also coming to Florida this winter, and he's going to be on my channel too. We're going to film the episode in person and talk about, so I'll get into more details from that element of things in another video. I apologize for dropping so many cliffhangers. This is just a trailer of my story. Anyways, Zach and I are vibing at the meetup. We go to a diner for breakfast. I'm opening up to him about some shit. I'm in this in-between phase of figuring out my own thing. Unlike the very money Twitter, money element, Zach resonates with that hippie, down-to-earth, grounded, spunky, rebellious aspect of me. And we kind of feel like kindred spirits immediately. And I mentioned him I'm kind of sad because it doesn't sit right with me to align with my parents in this way. He's like, what are you doing for Thanksgiving? I'm like, I'm not sure yet. I don't know. But I'm not going to be with my family. He's like, come join mine. Doesn't know me, right? Just meets this crazy random Asian chick follower on the beach. Opens up his home to me. I meet his wife, Ashley Hummel. I fly to Indiana on a whim, and I drive out to this cabin that they rented out in the woods. And I meet some other characters there from the online space. And we all just vibe in the cabin and have a beautiful Thanksgiving. And we play Yahtzee and whatever. Indiana. He owns Iron Valley Barbell there. So Zach and I form a friendship. Sometime after that, Zach will offer me some coaching. He does this thing where he'll find out like what your sauce is, like what your thing is. And he'll give you advice in terms of life direction. You know, he's created a lot of coaches under his clan as well in his world, which is kind of a different village or community to this more marketing, sales, business village of money Twitter. Like he's not really in money Twitter. There's overlap. Like he does do marketing and sales, but he's not like it's just totally different style. You know, way more like grassroots organic vibe on his end, opening up his own gym, winning these like competitions, doing some life coaching and helping other people also become coaches. I'm meeting dozens and dozens of more coaches from this other village and community from the Zach Hummel world, where he's created a whole clan of coaches in that world. We're talking things like ayahuasca coach. Anyways, we get on this one-on-one coaching call and he tells me, you know, your thing is your vibe. You are a connector and a networker. And in not so many words, he says, you know, you can do this thing where you just be Trina, go make all of your friends, leverage your network. This is the first time I'm like really paying attention to the concept of network. Even though I've been like networking my entire life, like I have no idea what that means. And I'll grow to hate this concept, and I'll explain more why. He's like, yeah, you're a natural networker and you can make a living off this because you make these friends that sell these different coaching programs, and you can just say, hey, I'll connect you with this person and this one. And, and you give me a little kickback for, helping create an opportunity that might have not otherwise come together that makes money. And then you just give me like a small cut of it. And then I just go out and do that. And now I'm like benefiting, people who need to find something on this end with people who just want to find something on this end, and doing my natural skill of vibing with everybody and making all these friends and connecting people and pairing them and then making money off of that. Zach is the first person who ever specifically advised me, Trina, you are a natural networker and you're a natural salesperson and you can live off this. I was triggered. After that call with him, and if you know anything about my career now, he's not wrong. Like I ended up in sales. But when he told me that, like I hated the idea of it. I don't know. There was something about it. Something felt weird about, hey, every time I go explore in this way that comes natural to me and meet people, I'm doing it to make money. Even though that's not inherently evil, like I didn't vibe with it at all. I hated it. At the risk of demonizing the concept of networking or sales, which the power of a network is irrefutable and the power of sales is irrefutable, and not all sales are bad, right? There isn't inherently bad about bartering finances for a good quality product or service. But I hated the weight of attaching money and being out to get something with making friends and just exploring all these different groups of people that I had always spent my life doing second nature. I didn't want those two to be a thing. Still figuring out who I am, right? So I get triggered and I feel really weird and I don't use the advice. And Zach and I address it and he's like, all right, do whatever you want, dude. Like, this is your life, whatever. Anyways, I didn't validate that idea at all at the time. A year later, I'd be like, yo, you were right. You were the first person to point this out. And I just couldn't see it at the time. And he's like, it's all good, man. And he continues like being a vibe and homie, visiting in Florida like annually. I go to his Do Hard Things stuff, events in Colorado. That's for other video and later in the story. Anyways, now we're in like 2022 and I'm still in between these roles. I'm doom scrolling Twitter one night and I scroll past, shout out to Rogue Well, sales, AI, and operations and systems. It's kind of Rogue's thing, I would say. Really cool guy. He posts some sort of tweet that has like a GoFundMe page on it. And I read the landing page or the description of the GoFundMe page. And it's just this really well-written story about his friends and some terrible things they're going through as a family, and they can't afford it. And he's graciously saying, like, if anybody wants to contribute to this cause, like, anything helps. Now, I'm still a brokey at this point. Like, I'm just bopping around between formative roles, and I'm just compulsively donating, I think it was like $111 to this GoFundMe page purely because I read a GoFundMe page that hit me in the feels. Rogue finds out that I did that, and he insists on doing something for me because I did that out of gratitude. He decides to host this group free sales training for a few people that donated in that online money Twitter corner. And I'll never forget this. So I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I get some free education and training from yet another well-known coach and mentor in this space. So as you see, I'm just like privileged as fuck, right? I'm just stacking connections, coaches, mentors. Like, I'm just looking at all this shit. All this shit that people are paying them thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for like an hour of the time. I'm just lucking into it. I'm just like the luckiest bitch and lesson ever. I loved learning, I loved exploring, and I loved vibing. It sounds so silly, but that's really all it was. And so anyways, I go to this free sales training, and there's 4 of us on the call. It's me, Rogue, who's the mentor, some guy, I don't remember his name, and then the only other person in there is Jeremy Schaller. Shout out to Jeremy. Jeremy Schaller was previously known as the LinkedIn legend. I think Rogue's main focus on that was like the Sandler method, which is a sales process method. Jeremy is the reason for the first time I experienced what a webinar is. And now I've worked and sold off so many webinars, right? A webinar is a live, scheduled, virtual event where everybody comes and it's like this presentation, typically educational, and it can generate leads and teach everybody. And I don't even remember what the topic was, but Jeremy and one of his business partners at the time were hosting a webinar on LinkedIn, and we meet at Rogue Sales Training, and he invites me to the webinar, and I attend it, and I remember I learned some stuff there, and I'm like, oh my God, thanks. So I learned some more shit there. And then after that, he invites me to meet and like co-work with him and yet another well-known person in the space. So now I go over and I meet Dylan Rich. Dylan Rich is known as the SDR whisperer in the online world. He trains and places setters in the online sales space. Setters are basically like the server assistants of closers / salespeople. They triage and set calls that go on a calendar if you're a salesperson. And he's really, really good at it. And in the future, we'll also cross paths again in this next chapter. But anyways, I go over, I meet Dylan, I meet Jeremy. They're teaching me more about sales. I'm telling them I kind of want to like revisit this idea of being some sort of life coach, but I hate the connotation of therapist and life coach because I don't want to be that version of it. I want to be my own like rebellious Trina version of it. I don't want to be cliche, but I really feel like this kind of shit can help. But I also don't feel like I can charge money for it. Like, who am I to help people with this growth? I don't think they're necessarily even interested in this kind of stuff, but Dylan kind of has a really strong relationship with God, and he's kind of got a spiritual aspect to his sales training he has, and he welcomes me to, invites me to that. Jeremy's doing some research and be like, look, these are random life coaches I just found through an easy LinkedIn search, and look like, you know, you have certain of these things, qualities in common with them. For whatever reason, through whatever they're teaching me, I feel enough validation to just give it a shot, a coaching offer. And their encouragement in combination with Rogue sales training, I just tweet with my tiny audience about my coaching offer, you know, and then sure enough, I'm getting inbound leads. Now I'm going to fast forward, I would say, of this chapter, like the most important leadership role that I take as my own individual thing, not working for a bigger thing than me, which will be very short-lived because I'll end up working for another big thing next. I get on my first sales call. PIF, 1 call close, $9,000. PIF stands for paid in full in the sales world. For those of you in the offline world who don't know what that is or aren't familiar with sales. And I just remember like closing my first deal. This isn't commission sales role for somebody else's offer. This is my own offer. So I get to keep the entire thing. And I sit on my couch in my little apartment for 1 to 2 hours after that call, after closing it and getting the money. And I'm just sitting there like, and my whole world changed. I couldn't believe it. I remember feeling like a tingling sensation. Like, you know, I had never made that much money on one call. And I'll go on a beautiful journey with that. You can see some of the, coaching testimonials on my YouTube, and I haven't uploaded them all. But that was a game changer, So that became my offer. It became like $3K a month for, weekly calls, 24/7 messaging access, a library of things, journaling and documents and material that we would use from our work together, and just being in your pocket as I think at the time I was, my offer, I was positioning it as inner work guide. Somewhere around this chapter, Daniel Fazio, Cold Email Wizard, we've been going back and forth ever since Oliver pointed out that he lived in Tampa. We just haven't been able to meet up. And he DMs me and he's like, yo, I'm moving to Miami tomorrow. So if you want to meet, it's your last chance. I'm like, all right, send it. So we link up that night. We go to, we meet up at like American Social in Tampa, which if you're from Tampa, you know what that is. It's on the water. It's one of the main big bars there. Lots of TVs, sports bar, right on the water. It's gorgeous. We decided to meet up there. And we just hit it all. We have a great time. We're vibing. We're just talking. It's really fun. We find out we both went to Florida State, and we both grew up in the same area. But we also both had this online money Twitter world in common. And next day, he's moving to Miami for his Miami arc. I tell him about I'm working for all. Or no, I think this was before I left. Yeah, because now I'm thinking about how we sat on the steps and told him I'm working for Oliver. So that was before the sales thing and the Jeremy thing. Anyways, so then that's the beginning of me being friends with Daniel Fazio. How'd you guys meet? And I'm like, we just fucking met up, and the rest is history. We just vibed. Daniel was also somebody who back in the day was like, listen, oh, you want to help people in this way? He didn't question it, right? He didn't need to be into what I was into to just be like, oh, you want to form an offer? Do this, do this, do this. Remember one time we went and got a drink at water, and he was like, here's what you're going to do. You're going to do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. And he said something about he pointed to the concepts of video sales letters or building a course or maybe both, and how to send the landing page. He made it very simple. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. But I was maybe still too insecure at the time or couldn't focus or whatever it was. I don't implement his advice. Now I'm in that season of life between working for Oliver on Han and working for Client Ascension. Throughout this phase, this isn't super chronological, but Daniel and I are partying. We have a yacht party in Miami for his birthday. I'll meet Ricardo and all these other people, and we'll stay friends. At some point, Daniel's like, yo, I need somebody to help me with this group that I'm starting called Internet Money. And the concept of Internet Money is this Discord group where for a really, really, really cheap price, you can go in and just be part of a community and learn about how, the basics of how to get into this make money online world. And I'm like, I'll do it. And I remember he told me all right, pitch me some price. And he's like, sold. Again, I'm just lucking into shit. Anyways, I go in there, I community manage the accountability channel for Internet Money, where people are trying to set goals for learning this material and posting on their social media or posting for marketing or clarifying their offer, so that they can just get their wheels off the ground with getting into this online money world. So I'm doing roundups and I'm keeping people accountable in this little Discord group. And the reason this group exists is because it is positioned as this group that you can be upsold from once you're ready to graduate to the big leagues. And what is the bigger, higher ticket community? Client Ascension, which is now very well known, right? Now, at the time, Daniel knew I worked for Oliver. So I don't know if he thought I knew more than I did, which would be easy to assume. And I'd been in this internet money space. I knew all these people, right? Or maybe he just, explained it to me once and gave me access to all this material and thought I would learn from it and just know better. But I remember at some point I was given responsibility to set call for Client Ascension, go in the DMs, support some of these people, but then also set opportunities so that the Client Ascension closers could close them on the bigger, higher ticket thing once they started making some money to be able to afford to graduate to the big leagues. And I remember doing some setting. The nature of setting, you need to grind, you need to hustle. You just need to dial. And every so often you'll get an answer and be able to set up a sales call. And I remember just trying a batch, probably not nearly enough, and being like, oh my God, this is boring. So I start slacking on that behind the scenes. And I'm trying to ask Daniel questions, and he's answering them very simply, and I'm just still like, God, this fucking sucks. It reminds me of that feeling that I got when I was like trying to do the operations role. Again, I'm just like nuking opportunity, right? This is foreshadowing part of my nature, which is like I'm very much an hard worker when it comes to live active responding to live stimulation. I can respond to it, no problem. In the more tedious, be behind the scenes of something and outbound, it's so draining to me. Like I do like a very small chunk of time of work for it, and I just feel dead. My entire life up until this point, I've been inbound girl when it comes to opportunities, friendships, lessons, like money. So in my personal social life outside of the professional world. So I'm not saying any of this is an excuse, but it's just always been my nature. At the time, I didn't really realize I wasn't setting enough. And I didn't really understand that sets and leads, like they cost money. Like it's so obvious when you're building an online business now, but like, you got to spend money when it comes to the systems and the gears and the tools you use to set up and run a community and, market it, pay chick like me on staff, and then everything from the funnel to that to client ascension. And I'm just oblivious. During this era, I'm like, Daniel's sending screenshots of me like vibing with everybody and keeping and calling people out in the accountability channel of Internet Money. He shows it to Andre Haycal Jr., also very well known online, co-founder of Client Ascension with Daniel and also another Dan and Christian. They're the 4 founders of Client Ascension. Daniel always just like sporadically when it's time for him to like be social and go out, like always just invite me. I would go out and meet up with them. And I remember one night I met up a bunch of more people from the online money Twitter space at one of these meetups. We were at the Hard Rock, and I remember seeing Andre. I recognized him from the online money Twitter scene. I was like, "Hey, you're Andre, right? Like I'm Trina. I follow you." And he's like, "What's up?" And he was so sweet. Anyways, after we met, and in combination with Daniel showing him what I was doing in the accountability channel and Internet Money, Andre was in charge of like operations and the team and everything for Client Ascension. He's like, "Bro, we need that over here." Client Ascension has less than 50 to 75 members at this point. They're very, very new at the startup. And they're forming a community now. And they need to start hiring team members. He's like, have her come do that for the entrepreneurs in Client Ascension. And so Daniel asked me about it. And I meet with Andre. And Andre goes through a great onboarding process. I'm like, fuck yeah. So now I'm like doing the accountability setting thing in Internet Money. And I'm in Client Ascension, just like accountability chick with a small group of people. We don't have any client success managers yet. We don't have hundreds and hundreds of business and founders in there yet. I think we only have 5 coaching calls at this point, if that, which will end up scaling up to like 10 or 15. Now I'm in another village/community meeting dozens of more well-known people and coaches. I attend every single coaching call. I take attendance. I take notes. And I post a recap of that coaching call for that day. Nick, he's teaching everything about lead generation and how to build lead lists and all that stuff on like Mondays, I think it was. And then on Tuesdays, I think it was Dylan Rich. He's teaching about setting, or maybe that was later. Then there's, Andre's having an operations and team building call. And then Daniel's having like an offers call at the time, I think. And Mario, which is another well-known coach in the online space, is the Friday mindset coach call, which I loved those because those were very like kumbaya energy. No, it was like the outlier in the group because it was like everybody's very bullish on hustle, hustle, hustle. And he was very much like manage your energy so you can improve the ROI of the time and energy you invest. And I loved his calls. We also had personal branding calls with Log Fitz, who's also really well-known in the online health space. Oh, and a sales call. The Tuesdays calls was sales calls with David Jacob, who is one of my original sales mentors too. He becomes my buddy. And that's another chapter. We have our whole journey together too. This British Indian guy who's like, he's like the Salmon Cowell of Client Ascension, right? He's like very like talking to you really abrasively, but he's a really good, smart trainer and blah, blah, giving you a hard time. But like, he has that, like he's good intentions and like, he's really funny and he like kind of helps me and takes me under his wing. And I'm loving his sales calls. My favorite calls at the time are the sales call on Tuesdays with David, the Friday call with Mario, the mindset call. And I also loved kind of like the personal brand vibe with Log, just because Log was a vibe too, but I'm not building my personal brand yet. I'm like scared. So remember, I'm going on every single one of these coaching calls every single week. So I'm basically getting like crunch time mastery. I'm getting trained by an army of coaches every week in this way that people are spending like $10,000 for so that they can learn the tool they need to scale their business. On top of that, I'm just voluntarily drifting into this role that keeps finding me in everything, which is like this one-on-one dynamic. I'll just voluntarily hop on one-on-ones with some of the clients in Client Ascension when they're going through some shit. This is where that coaching role continues, and I end up meeting a lot of business owners in that world, getting testimonials from some of them, and just continuing to feel more valid in how I can help people. It shifts from inner work guy, which is a little too woo-woo for the bros, right? I'm just randomly happening to prove that this kind of conversation with me isn't that stereotypical soft therapy thing. It's benefiting guys who don't even want to talk about their problems, but for some reason they're leaving conversations with me with clarity around their decisions, around their business, around their personal stuff, even around some relationship stuff. And it's like, who am I to advise about relationships, right? I'm just a single wacko crazy Asian chick bopping around, vibing, and trying to help with like the culture and accountability of this thing. I'm so obsessed with, 5 to 10 hours a week on coaching calls and hopping on all those one-on-ones and running around doing various things there that I've totally just like dropped the ball on like setting or doing accountability and internet money at the time. So I fully transitioned to like Client Ascension being my main focus. I talked to Andre about it. I'm like, oh, I'm not really a priority for this over here. You think it's okay with Daniel? He's like, talk to Daniel. And I bring it up to Daniel, and Daniel's like, whatever. It's all good. And we're all focused on this like startup culture scaling, and like, it's just crazy. It gets crazy. It starts going really, really, really fast. And they start bringing on so many agencies to help them scale that it becomes necessary for Andre to hire client success managers because I can't take care of everybody, right? So like, don't worry, like that's unreasonable. And he hires client success managers so that, each client success manager can be personally responsible for a batch of clients. I learned so much. We go from 5 coaches to, I think it was like 15. There's a lead gen call, sales call, set call with Dylan, personal branding call with Logan and Nick, operations call, email copywriting call with Christian. Basically every element that you need to run a business, I was just getting trained on hours and hours every week, along with working behind the scenes one-on-one with each business owner and just getting hours and hours every week of what it's like behind the scenes of a mind of somebody who's struggling with health, wealth, or relationships, and how that's getting in the way of another area of their life. And it just continues validating this way I serve people. In those conversations, maybe they would come to me because they were burnt out with business and it was causing problems in their relationships at home, maybe with their wife or their family or with their friends and family, and or maybe their health. Maybe they were so burnt out, then I just was helpful in terms of like keeping them accountable for like, take a walk, go to the gym. Oh my gosh, now you have the bandwidth to think. Mental health. Maybe they would be like really good on health, but now they need kind of a guidance counselor role for me to say, here, you're working on this problem in your business. You need to go to the lead generation call and work on XYZ. So the entry points always varied, whether it was health, wealth, relationships, and I would just talk to them, get to know their story, help tailor some sort of solution, help them find clarity with that, and then we would reconnect and their problem would be solved. Sometimes I would hear really, really personal stories, things that these guys didn't talk to about anybody else. You can have that person who's just like, I can't do anything myself. I have no agency. I have no personal responsibility. I want everybody to help me. Not really a self-starter. And on the other extreme of it, you have people who are like very independent and like figure it out myself and don't want to ask for help and don't want to rely on people. And they're more of the self-starter type. And those tend to be the best help because even though they're not as open to getting help, you give them a little bit of guidance and they can run with it. Entrepreneurs tend to be more of that latter type, but they didn't really have to go through that process of like, oh, I need to talk to somebody about my problems or I need a therapist. In fact, most of them totally would reject the opportunity for that. I remember Kai Cromwell, he owns an SEO agency. Even in his testimonial, he's like, I never wanted this. I never saw this as being helpful. I'm not really the kind of person who wants to talk about it. You just end up talking to each other and vibing and hey, it was actually really helpful. Same thing with a bunch of other guys on there that I do and don't have public testimonials with, like Matt Lucero and his cold email agency, Eamon, who dropped out of college and I have a testimonial for him and now he runs it up with YouTube funnels. Alex Welch, Jordan Bailey, and all of his journey. The first round of like original Client Ascension clients before we had client success managers, like, we all bonded as like the first wave of originators of this community. And when we got dedicated CSMs, Andre was like, listen, you can just post in the broadcast announcement channel, where I would post like kind of newsy updates and videos, just keeping the community up to date on what's going on. They're like, you can just let all the original people know who didn't get assigned a client success manager that you'll take care of them so that they're not left out there hanging if anybody needs one. I was like, cool. So I did that. And again, inbound, I end up getting, people like Jordan Bailey, Alex Welch, Eamon, Kai Cromwell, Bronson Wilson, who's also another testimonial person. They all reach out to me. I'm like, cool. So we formed this little squad called Team Trina. And because it's kind of like an outlier of this formal client success manager sector that's now been built, because it was kind of in between those phases, I just kind of have full reign to run it the way I want to. And it ends up being amazing. The guys like take off. We all really, really bond. Everybody has their own like unique individuality to it. We end up talking about some really personal shit in and outside the business. I'm holding them accountable. We're vibing. We're having weekly calls. They're all ascending as fuck. I'm getting on one-on-one work with some of them, getting testimonials. They're all like kind of flipping the tables on me. Like, listen, Trina, when are you going to start your offer? When are you going to start your business? Why don't you do this coaching thing that you just helped me with and like take it seriously? Like, go make your content, go make your landing page. And I begin to start getting, again, encouragement from all these successful people and proof that I can do it and all the tools I need to scale and run an offer in an agency and all this stuff. And I'm just like, meh. You could say I didn't believe in myself enough and I was scared. And that was definitely part of it, a big part of it, right? It was so much easier to like honor responsible roles for somebody else than it was for myself at the time. And then outside that, I just defaulted to that free, careless, creative writer who's not really being productive or caring about making money. Again, this is another pattern that's repeating, right? Became my pattern that I was just bringing through all these different chapters that you're hearing. Free-flowing, starving artist, doing whatever, with no lucrative incentives, no attention-chasing incentives, no build something and show up and work for it incentives. And then working for something bigger than me, where I am caring about money and I am caring about contributing to a cause and I am working hard in any way that I can. And I'm learning about all these different things and making all these different friends and connections and mentors. And those just were so separate that I think now I'm like in a season of integrating them. At some point, I want to make more money. Daniel, I'm kind of starting to outgrow my I don't care about making any money era. Back in like the Oliver and Hahn conversations, when I was a server, I remember telling them something along the lines of like, yeah, when I make $2,000 or $3,000 a month, I'll be fine. I'll be happy. Oh my gosh. They probably knew at the time, like, oh yeah, okay. But I really, really genuinely believe that. And then it's funny because then you start making money online and you're like, oh, I want more. I'm not as money ambitious as like most of the business owners I know, but I wanted more. So I revisit the idea of sales and I'm feeling like a big dog from my, freelance sales piffs. And at some point I'm with the boys. Dan is the head of sales, running the sales for Client Ascension. And all the boys are talking about how nobody's willing to take weekend calls during this season. And they're getting a lot of leads, so they need to open up like weekend availability. And I'm like, guys, I'll do it. I'll work weekends and open up my calendar for sales calls. I'm like, oh, nice. So they give me an opportunity. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to crush it. It's so cliche, like a rookie salesperson to be like, oh my gosh, yeah. Instead of giving you a hard yes or no, they're like, oh yeah, I'll do it later. And then they ghost you. Like there's so many cliche sales lessons I didn't know at the time, but I thought I knew it all. I thought I was hot shit. I viewed sales and my one-on-one clarity coaching, I viewed those as the same. Because to me, and I viewed those roles as the same as what I always did in hospitality, which is each table was like a Zoom call to me. I just show up, I meet a stranger, I vibe with them, I help clarify, point them in the right direction. At minimum, we have a good time together and give them some clarity that they thank me for. And the only other place we can land is like they end up paying me money, whether that was in the hospitality or the sales commission or, client work. All of that was the same to me. So I just was like, I can totally do this. And I'll never forget my first day of taking sales calls. I met up with the guys after. I meet cooking with Chris on some like rooftop barbecue and a bunch more people from the online space. I'm like, yeah, I'm definitely going to close all 5 calls. And the guys are like, nice. And I end up closing none of those. And anyways, I get, I'm not doing well. And I'm only taking like 5 sales calls every Saturday. So I'm also not getting many reps every week. I was feeling like shit, you're just getting rejection after rejection after rejection. And it's par for the course. Like every salesperson has to go through this when they're starting out. But I had such a privileged start that I was like, what the hell? Like this should be so easy. Why is it not working? Dan would give me feedback and try to train me. And then like on the sales training with David, all of it, all the feedback I would get in sales was very similar to the feedback I remember getting in my writing sometimes from other mentors. And it was, you're not following process enough. You're not going in a clear sequence enough. You are talking too much. They need to be talking more and all this stuff. And I remember just being like, oh, okay. And process, I'm not a very process-oriented person, right? I'm just a viber and a yapper. And this is funny because this will come full circle in my most recent sales chapter where I'm just crushing it. And my relationship with the sales process changes as the industry changes. Anyways, I'm totally fumbling the bag. I'm feeling really insecure about it. I'm feeling really overwhelmed with a bunch of stuff happening with that business growing, feeling like shit with the client ascension thing. I'm just feeling like shit. And I'm not really telling anybody how shitty I'm feeling. Like I just feel like I should be able to handle it on my own. Bitching about it on Twitter as usual. And I remember at some point, and then I traveled Europe one summer. I traveled over there for a wedding, for Will and Weston's wedding, and also a client ascension event in London. And some of you guys have seen me on that Zarsace birthday party YouTube video. I'll link it here, where Daniel and me and Scott Millard, who's a known content creator and videographer and creative director in the online space, who used to film content for Daniel. He did like a documentary video on that where we all flew to London. It's a really funny video, and Daniel let me and Scott crash in his room at the Four Seasons. I meet Michael Pack, David, Ranky, Sean Preneur, and all these more like big business owners in the money Twitter space, again, in London. Connor Sunderland was another sales coach in Client Ascension that I also met out there. So many people. And then during this summer, I fly out and I'm just so overwhelmed and feeling like shit about myself and my inability to like close. And I don't really understand startup culture. And I'm starting to really worry that we're a scam. The algorithm starts like feeding me. This is really important to pay attention to. Because this happens to anybody is vulnerable to the mind virus that entered my mind during this time. Remember, I'm working with my friends. I'm outgrowing this like offline artist type perception of money is evil and marketing attention are evil, but there's still some residuals of it or something inside me. Now the algorithm knows I'm like paying attention to making money online because I'm in this world. I start getting exposed to a lot of content about scams. There's so much content online about everything is a scam. These entrepreneurs making online are a scam, XYZ. And I think so much of it gets in my system and in my psyche, which is why the importance of guiding your attention is so important. Because you just download this stuff to your subconscious and you get programmed with it, right? You just carry it around through how you view everything. That combined with being in a fearful, low vibrational, stressed out, burnt out, or insecure state is just hell. I'm expressing this through writing at the time on Twitter. As I've always done, I'm trying to figure out what is going on, and I'm coping and I'm venting and I'm public journaling with this concept that I'm digesting of like, oh, fuck scams. This is bad. This is good. Screw these people. I also started worrying that not only could what we were selling be a scam. I'm on exec meetings at this point. I'm helping the guys in my role with them, but I'm also like having this like breakdown, low key behind the scenes with myself and trying to figure it out and process it so it doesn't show up when I'm like with people. But remember, I've carried this pattern of feeling like my Twitter self is just this isolated girl public journaling and has no attention. And what should be very obvious at this point is I don't have no attention, right? But in my brain, I'm totally blind to the fact that there's a bunch of eyeballs on me. Because my private introverted writing figure it out self is completely separate to me, to my kumbaya relational understanding there for you self when I'm with people. even if this one is exposed to people's attention. This is how dangerous it is, right? The guys never like gave me shit for any of this. I can only guess in hindsight. If I was them, I'd be like, what the fuck is this chick doing, right? I remember trying to address it with them. They were like, no, everything's cool. And I was like, I hope you know that I'm not like writing about you. I'm just processing my shit, right? And I tried to explain myself and be understood. And they were like, it's fine, whatever. And they're distracted with things about the business. And I'm kind of just like feeling so insecure. I'm like, everything is about me, Because when you're in a really insecure state, you tend to become more narcissistic. And I don't mean narcissistic as this like over pathologized therapy speak online, where if you're a narcissist, you're a demon. But there's a shadow, dark element to it, where you are so focused on yourself, you can less consider other people. Only from a secure sense of self can you really begin. I had to move inside because the wind was making it hard to communicate. It's almost 8 p.m. now. I've been yapping for fucking ever. All right, where was I? Yeah, I'm not even using this like organized timeline thing I prepared for myself on my computer. There's a lot I skipped. Blah, blah. Startup culture is hard. If you're in business, you know that. Politics exist. It's a huge liability to have this random artist, creative girl just yapping all of her shadow musings in public. But I'm really, really fortunate. I keep liking in all this shit. Also at the time, when I'm burnt out, like I literally go over and like cry to Oliver and Han because of how stressed I am. And they're helping me understand like people aren't bad and I'm not scamming and all this stuff. And I'm so grateful for it. And I addressed and I apologized to Daniel a few times and eventually to Andre and the boys and all this stuff, whatever. And, scaling a business is really hard. And like I was really getting seasoned in the trenches, learning all these different things I didn't understand about. It really emotionally challenges you, even though it's not considered an emotional venture. And it requires systems. And best in the live active response, there's a whole inside baseball version of client ascension that I'll save for later in another video. Because now we're hours into this thing and I'm still yapping. The right mentors keep showing up exactly where I need them. I've spent a year of hours and hours and hours of being coached in all these ways that you need to run a business. I'm just getting the ultimate masterclass. I'm getting like 6 figures worth of free training along with these paid opportunities, along with my personal development happening. And there's little bits of it coming out. So more and more are people starting to be like, who is this chick? But I swear in my brain, like I was so oblivious to it, I still always felt like just this nobody bopping around, making friends, looking into random gigs. Like that was still my self-image. It was the total opposite to what people typically have online, which is they see themselves as this big dog, even though they're a little dog. I had the complete inversion. I was, starting to get more attention, more experience, more validation, whatever. And I just kept seeing myself with this really, really small identity and not seeing how being that small identity self was increasing in liability because you can't just recklessly do thought experiments about concepts of shadow work and scams in public on the timeline. They're out there in the attention economy. So they can't not affect other people. They're in people's awareness. And so as some of this like stress and tension arises or whatever, what I realized this past summer was that initial women's group betrayal and humiliation where I felt like people like were misunderstanding me and talking about me and were rejecting me, that was playing out. Now, I didn't know it at the time, but it was. These 2 wolves inside me became this like joke that I always tweet about and memed. And it is like a meme in the online culture to be like, oh, I'm schizo posting, this version of you over here that's talking over here. But for me, it was just when I'm in solitude, processing creative writing, doing thought experiments, processing self-development, self-actualization, ascending in my own journey, nobody is around. Like that was just the mode I would get in flow state, in writing and self-expressing. But when I was with people, I was very fixated on supporting them, nurturing them, caring for them, understanding them, and vibing with them. I also do end up having an opportunity to do the Client Ascension Mastermind event organization. I started volunteering to do some stuff because they're hosting a big mastermind event in Tampa. And I have a background in events and hospitality. So I'm like, I got it. And I started doing that. And I have so much fun doing that. I'm meeting more and more clients. Like, one of the clients in there was like the owner of Kajabi. And we had speakers like Eddie Malouf and Taylor Welsh as speakers at our event. So I met them. And just meeting hella people and learning hella things and bopping around, doing what I can. Stretch go, all these people. I met Ben Bader and Mason, Cardinal Mason at that point. I remember at that event, like when somebody calls you out for some shit, even if they're not directly talking to you, it just resonates and it's like, oh fuck. And I remember during that event, one of you said something about like made jokes about a scam. And in hindsight, it, it could have been about me because at the time I was just like schizo posting on Twitter about like scams. But then when I was with the guys and in the business, I was like, oh, no, everybody's a good person here. And like my intuition was just like over here in solitary writing mode, dealing with this shadow trigger thing from this original mother wound betrayal shit. And like, how do you explain that to the boys? And then with the boys, it's like, my gut was like, oh, we're safe here. These are good people. And we're just like doing this. So whatever. And like learning all my business lessons I don't understand. Anyways, client ascension enters that phase. What started at like less than 50 people and all the OG coaches and OG students, it scales. And now there's like hundreds of people in the community. And as many companies experience, you enter a season of, okay, now we've added so much. We need to now renovate and like minimalize and keep what's most essential. I leave my community manager role, which they're so supportive of. Somewhere in this path, I also meet Zuby. He is a rapper, author, children's book writer, mindset coach, public speaker. He has a very well-known podcast. He's been on Joe Rogan. He's spoken to Elon. Like he speaks all over. Holly and Han and I went to watch him speak at a college somewhere else in Florida. Same as with Daniel, who's well-known. People would be like, how do you know Zuby? There is no secret. At some point, I followed Zuby on Twitter, just like all the other people I met. And I think he also posted something about being in Florida. He's just nice and human. Who else during that chapter? Elias of Practice Events. During that time, I have a testimonial from him. Again, more and more worlds and communities. Again, Trina's pattern of big thing and my own thing repeats. I am burnt out. I'm tired. I'm stressed. I've been like triggered in all this shadow work low key. And I return to this same place that I keep arriving, which is like, damn, I keep getting swept up in this thing bigger than me. And I really just need to do my own thing and it's starting to feel wrong. And so I leave that behind. I step down into just having a weekly coaching call and client ascension. I'm no longer the community manager or the event girl or whatever. And then eventually that phases out too. And but now, I'm between jobs again. And I'm again in an in-between season that changes everything. So now we've passed all these eras, right? And now post client ascension. One night I'm doom scrolling Twitter. Shout out to Lawrence King and Blondie. Lawrence and I were already mutuals. Blondie I had met in Rogue Wealth Sales Training Dojo. If anybody remembers that era. This German sales guy. I just saw Lawrence post something and I was like, oh, Lawrence is cool. Maybe I can go learn sales from him. Again, on a whim, just like the Rogue Wealth landing page. I just randomly click on something and I'm like, fuck it, let's do this. I paid the thing like $100, something really, really cheap for really good training. And I attend this like 5-day workshop that Lawrence King is posting. And I'm like, oh, let me brush up on my sales skills. And I'm between jobs. And I do that training. I really enjoy it. All the guys are really cool. And I run into Blondie there with the British and the German, like, and the guys in there and like the sales broy culture. Like, I feel so much more at home there than I felt I'm really still interested in this like growing spirituality inner work thing. But my version of it is so much more edgy because, I'm abrasive. I say things out loud. My sense of humor is very like broy and just, I can say things and nobody takes it offensively in these cultures and it just feels more free. And so I enter it and I go through the workshop and they have their own process they've come up with, why this process is an improvement on other trainings that are very well known in the space and used, like Cole Gordon type training. Now I'm on my like 7th sales process that I'm learning. And this one feels like the one I like the most because they kind of very much center on the principles and it's very vibey. Like if I was ever not being like Trina or I was kind of awkward or off, the guys we would just call each other out and roast each other. And we had a really good culture in there. And we just put the reps in. I did hella role play calls. And you pass a certain number of calls in there. And then you're like, you get signed off on as, go look for a job. Now we approve of you to go be worthy of being a closer for somebody. At this point in time, Lawrence, who's doing placement for Sales Dons, he gets me an opportunity with an interview with a guy who had multiple offers, ends up loving me, and extends me an opportunity on any offer he has that I want. And I spend an hour and a half with this guy. And Lawrence is like, awesome, that's great. He loves you. Go for it. Remember, I'm in between jobs. I've thrown my savings into this program. And I'm like, okay, I got to make it work. And now I need a job. I haven't made money in months, right? And I get this opportunity and it's great and it's promising. And I'm like, wait, I don't have any reason. I really can't tell you why I was doing this. One of the guys in Sales Dons, we would all share opportunity listings in the chat with each other, knowing that some of us were trying to job hunt. And one of the ones that was shared was looking for a girl, specifically a female closer. And I was like, oh, that's great. I was like, there's only a couple chicks in there. And that listing ended up leading me to Vision. We just hopped on the phone. We just hit it off. And it's less than 10 minutes. He's like, I can tell you can sell. I was like, oh, cool. And he's like, listen, I got this fitness health influencer with hundreds of thousands of followers on YouTube and Instagram. And they're looking for somebody to sell her for. And I'm like, oh, perfect. I have experience with health coaching offers and all this stuff. He talks about some other offers too, but that's the one I for some reason fixate on. I'm like, cool. That happens before I get on the interview that Lawrence places me with. And for some reason, I really want to see what's going to go on with that chick health offer opportunity. It's just more up my alley. It aligns with my natural interests more. And I think the one that he placed me with, one of the main ones was AI. And it's, at the time, I'm still fuck AI. AI is the devil. Artificial intelligence, what about organic natural intelligence, right? I think that was one of the things that rebelled me, which isn't reasonable, right? I'm on another level, I'm aware that this is a good opportunity and I need the money. Lawrence was really cool about it. He's like, listen, it's your life. I think you should do it, but all good. So anyways, I make that guy wait. I'm like, listen, I'm so sorry, but I want to explore this other opportunity before I give you a yes or no. I'm just trusting my gut or whatever Trina's doing. And I go back and I'm like, listen, I have an opportunity and he's waiting for me to give him an answer and I can't keep him waiting. Before I commit to that and go all in on it, I was really interested in the offer that you told me about. And I'd really love to just see what's going to happen there before I make my decision. He's like, bet. He's like, let me see what I can do. Lucky Trina strikes again. Now we enter the last 14, 15, 16 months of my life. I get texted this calendar link. And he's like, I never do this. This is my friend Daniel, not Daniel Fazio, Daniel Di Pilato, co-founder of Net Revenue. Book a 15-minute call with him. He'll tell you what's up with that offer. So I just sneak on Daniel's calendar because I'm like, listen, I got to commit to this other decision. I need to know the answer now. I hop on. I've never heard of Net Revenue at this point. Up until now, it's all been in some way in this coaching corner of Money Twitter. So I get on call with Daniel and I riff some things that I've been trained to say on the interview. Listen, this is what I'm about. This is what I want. This is what I've done. I tell them about my duality and my interests and, all that shit in my application, which is so funny to look back on. We talk for 10, 15 minutes. Remember, the night before this, I've talked to the other opportunity offer owner for an hour and a half. And there's a bunch of different offers. I was like, so what do you think? Later, he'll be like, I met this girl and I was like, she was like, oh, fuck yeah. You could argue I was a personality hire or pretty girl privilege or whatever it is. Or maybe he really did see something special in me or maybe a combination, who knows? But I was really lucky. Again, And we spend less than 15 minutes together. And he's like, yo, listen, this woman's health fitness coach offer that you want to hop on, it's not in the right place for you to get on it yet. But I think we should get you on another offer. We should get you on like a $20,000, $30,000 OTE role where you're making $20,000 to $30,000 a month. OTE stands for on track earnings. I've never made that amount of money, right? And I'm like, oh my God, cool. We talked a little bit about like him being into like wine and food. And I tell him about my background, whatever. So he can get me started immediately. Anyways, less than 15 minutes, he closes me on the opportunity with net revenue. Shout out to Daniel. He tells me about how him and his brother opened up this company because they used to work for this other company that kind of screwed them out of a lot of money. And at the time, I'm feeling kind of screwed out of a lot of money because I'm being taught by some other people behind the scenes I won't mention about like, scope creep. And, you're doing all these things beyond your roles and your responsibilities and you're not being paid for them. And that's fucked up. You're being taken advantage of. You just feel underpaid when you're staff. I'm not here to make a claim about morals or what's right or wrong. It is just an objective fact that when you work for somebody, whether you're a closer taking a 10, 15% commission on an offer, or you're a team member working for somebody and you're only making a certain cut of how much that company profits, that is just the nature of working for somebody else. People make jokes about entrepreneurs and how they're formed and they want to open their own business. So you see just how little you're making in proportion to how much the company's making. But that's the nature of the beast. The only other option is to, carry all the burdens of opening your own thing and running a whole team and everybody's paychecks and livelihoods relying on you. Or you just accept this is the position you're in. And there were people that I was being advised by outside these situations that were telling me like, you're getting underpaid, you're doing way too much. Nobody ever made me do anything, like it was all voluntary. But no matter what, something about, making more money and not discounting my value and just being recognized and validated for my talent. Like it felt so good and I was so excited. And to like just venture into this world of opportunity outside the internet money space, like was so cool. Net revenue was another big stage. Unlike Client Ascension focused on scaling agencies, net revenue was originally, partnered with a bunch of coaching offers and would be the outsourced sales team for that offer, eventually evolving, like being responsible for scaling these coaching offers. But they're still in this transition of being more sales focused. So they have a lot of clients. There's dozens of brands, offers, and there's just real stakes. There's professional highs and lows through all of this. So the first offer I get put on is they're pairing me with this like Vietnamese guy, Thatch, who if you look that up Thatch Nguyen, he's a big real estate investing coach guru, very famous, property all over the country. I'm selling his offer for a while. My first week in the role, like I don't close anything. So I'm a little nervous and I'm like, fuck. Then I just go balls to the wall. And I remember having a conversation with one of the sales directors of the time, Mike. And I was like, do you need me to go sicko mode? And he's like, I need you to go sicko mode, Trina. I just like go on an absolute tear. I'm like doing like 10 to 15 calls a day at some point. Anyways, my second week in the company at net revenue, I go on a 12 deal tear. I closed 12 deals in a row. Everybody's shouting me out in Slack. And a new chick on the block pulling up in like summer, which is notorious for being slower. And I'm new on this offer and I'm just crushing it, feeling like hot shit. So I do that for a while. Again, I've re-entered this phase of like, I'll do my sales commission only thing and I'll also grow my own thing. But I started getting swept away into, the sales world and this new community that I'm vibing and bonding with. And this offer is something where it's like really hustle and grind and high volume. Like you have so many leads. And I remember hitting a point where I was like, oh my God, like I'm gonna get burnt out. Like I can't do this. Like I need time off. And whenever that's happening in these different cycles, like I'm starting to resent the fact that somebody can just tell me to work harder and I'm not having any time or energy for my own thing and prioritizing my own thing. I voice that a little bit and address it. Like I take Sundays off again, whatever. I meet another one of my mentors, Ben. He was a sales director and then he got promoted to chief sales officer. As opposed to Mike, like this resonated with the like very like, listen to gangster rap, like ADHD, neurodivergent brain, charismatic, Swiss Army knife personality vibe, and just like blah, 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 and like, hype myself up type vibe. And Ben spoke to that other side of me, which was the very like health obsessed, empathy obsessed side of me. he has such electric energy. We all make jokes about like Benergy. And then last year, this was like October of 2024, Net Revenue had like an annual sales summit retreat in Miami. We all met in person, and it's such a special thing when you meet people from the online world offline for the first time, because you could talk to somebody a million times or follow them and like know all this stuff, but you don't really meet them offline in person. And when you do, it's just like, whoa, it's such a trippy experience. And I meet Ben there, we meet each other and we hit it off, and we have such a good time. And he's like, listen, you are perfect for this offer. And he puts me on the health coaching offer. And honestly, I wouldn't realize till months later. And he didn't know this either, but I was originally interested in Net Revenue because of this chick's health offer. And he just happened to be working that offer at the time and being like, let's get Trina on this. So I'm like, fuck yeah. And it's more up my alley too, because it's just like a smaller team, smaller community, and a smaller offer. I'm running into this lesson again, like I ran into with the client ascendant opportunity, where I'm like, I am not this hustle culture, grind set, high volume worker. Like my bandwidth is a lot lower for it. You know, it's just not my nature. I keep trying to do it and then hitting this wall where I'm so resentful and burnt out. I need to adjust. And now I know enough a few times to where this is just not my nature. It's not how I work best. I end up collecting some validation for it. Shout out to Hannah Eden. Hannah Eden is also another huge public figure in the online space. You can look her up on Instagram, YouTube. She's helping health and fitness and wellness coaches, like, you know, go from offline to online and learn how to like put together ebooks and whatever. That becomes our main focus. I get taken off Springboard. Now I'm just selling the women's thing. I go on an absolute tear with that. And now I crush that. Now it's the second offer I crush for Net Revenue. And that's been great. And then we go through some shit with that offer, just more business stuff. I'm working with Ben. We go through some stuff in the business with staff changing. Again, like the company's scaling, staff is changing, dynamics are changing, business stuff is happening. There are startup elements to these different things. I'm vibing and bonding with various people in this community. I start like leaving my work days with some ideas to process that I'm writing about when it comes to brands growing and marketing and sales and all this stuff. There's been like a dozen processes I've learned leading up to this. Ben's very like he's a big learner, and a couple of his big inspirations are Chris Voss, who uses empathy, and also Hormozy, who's got like that gym hustle bro, work hard as possible till the wheels fall off. So I learned his process and I crush it with that. And then I'm kind of doing my own thing too. I also learned from Paolo somewhere in this phase, Paolo Barreto. I'm probably butchering your last name, Paolo, but Paolo also ends up like pulling up as one of my mentors at the time. He happens to be Hannah's wife. He like teaches me a bit of his game and trying to trim my yap. And so that's cool. So now I've learned like a billion processes, so different sales processes, right? Now I'm on Ben's team. Now, if you follow me from the Twitter space, you know that I do thought experiments, and I've worked with people and talked about these concepts in the relationship world. Talked with Pat, as some of you guys have seen, feminine, masculine energy work, how the classic trad culture, how pieces of it are relevant, but also speaking to some more of these modernized elements and kind of representing this like, again, integration. One element of me likes to just relax into her feminine, ride shotgun, feelings, feels like the anchored elements of these old things are relevant in dynamics, but also a lot of gray nuance, because we're not in the 1950s and we're in a modern area and times have changed and women work now and have their own sense of self. And I've just benefited so much from people crafting their own sense of self and individuality that, you know, I have parts of what I resonate with from the more traditional masculine, feminine roles, but the parts of it I totally reject and rebel from, just through my own life experience. Now, to throw some support on this, 2 parts. One, I'm selling this health, fitness, wellness coaching offer for Hannah. Through that, I'm speaking to a female avatar now, more than I ever have. I was like hyping girls up. A lot of these women were at this point where they were following their intuition, or it felt like their purpose. And we would talk about like vibes and intuition on these calls, and that would work a lot. So now I'm entering this season where I'm leaning more into my spiritual side, and I'm talking to women more. And one of the patterns I'm noticing there is like, you know, even these women that were stay-at-home moms, their husband was leading and providing and everything, and they were fulfilled by being a mother, they were also craving their own sense of self and individuality, even with all of that taken care of, feeling safe, respecting and loving their husband. being a mom. They wanted something of their own. They wanted some sort of sense of individuality that could, they wouldn't have to ask their husband every time they needed money, even though he was happy to give it. And maybe they could make money using their little health, wellness, or fitness passion, and also, use the online economy to do that in a way where they could be a mom staying at home and also fulfill some sort of purpose and individuality and make some money. And it started really validating this idea of like, breadwinning women who want to have their own identity and sense of self is not at odds with the role of the safe feminine who's provided for and led by a husband and is being a mom. Again, another element of integration where people think those things are at odds. Now I'm collecting hundreds and hundreds of calls of the fact that those things aren't at odds either. Pattern repeats again. I'm also collecting evidence of the online and offline worlds integrating, right? Brick and mortar gym owners being burnt out and realizing that they can transition to the online economy, and just like Hannah had. Stay-at-home moms, breadwinning. And just like I had encountered through hundreds of calls in previous seasons, like in Client Ascension, people wanting to leave the offline world in their miserable 9-to-5s or whatever it is for the online world to make internet money, and wanted some way to work online so that they could have more quality of life, because working in this way wasn't fulfilling enough. They saw other people doing it and they wanted to explore the chance of them doing it too, and this was their thing. So fast forward, I've now worked 2 offers for net revenue and crushed it. And I'll come to work 2 more. The third opportunity, I'll run into this girl that Ben pairs me with. She's kind of got more of that like masculine edge. He'll be like, I'm going to put you all in a breakout room on this sales training call. And we end up vibing. And he's like, I knew you guys would get along. And she's on this dating and relationship offer. And I'm like, net revenue has dating relationship offers? And it's a men's dating relationship offer. And I'm just naturally really interested in it because of my background in, masculine self-development, the dating relationship concepts, and all this stuff. And I mainly love talking to men. And that's weird and taboo, but, it's a normal thing over here. I'm like, cool. So I talked to her about it. I'm like, oh my God, damn, I would love to be on that with you. And she was like, well, funny you say that because I'd actually love to be on the Hannah offer. I originally wanted to work for net revenue because of the Hannah offer. I've been following her forever and I would love to have my own health and fitness coaching thing. My background is actually in personal training, blah, blah, blah. So me and her are like, oh my God, I want to be on the offer you're on and you want to be on the offer I'm on. Maybe we could like both be each other's second string. Bring it up to Ben. He's like, let's see what we can do. Eventually, that girl goes through a hard season on the dating relationship offer. And Ben really knows that I want to be on it. And he's like, yo, you still want to be on this? And I was like, yeah. And he's not working the Hannah offer with me anymore. He's like, okay. Puts me with the dating relationship offer. Now another big coach in the online world, Sarah Dawn Moore, one of my latest clients I've sold for, right? I get on and I immediately go on a tear. And so now this is the third offer with net revenue that I've been put on, and it's going absolute fucking tear, right? One in the wealth domain, then in the health domain, and now the relationship domain. Again, this pattern keeps repeating of all these different entry points in me and my instrument and what I can do: health, wealth, relationships. And all of those kind of being the pillars of not only the industries and markets, but also just quality of life. And all of them being important elements to me. I'm talking to all these men. I'm talking to the alpha guy who has no problem spitting game, getting dates, getting laid. You might look at him and be envious of what he can get. But behind the scenes, he really just wants to be able to settle down and be more emotionally fulfilled and connected, but he just can't get there. And he's like, doesn't want to even talk about this right now, but it's getting so tiring and lame that he's like, all right, let me just check this out because this girl's content, it's kind of a vibe. You've also got like the jaded men where like maybe they've been through a divorce or some girl cheated on them or some girl screwed them over in some way and lied. Now they're kind of jaded and they kind of hate women and they're bitter, but they don't want to live like this anymore. They want partnership. You've also got like the overthinking guys who are really, really smart, but they're just so in their head and out of their body. They are not really, magnetizing women. They're just like too anxious and overthinky or whatever kind of vibe. Really logical, not able to tap into the emotions or at all. There's also like the nice guy, like kind of archetype where like he's so nice, but like he's like the kind of guy you want to date with, and it's like he's just so nice. You're like, damn, I kind of feel bad for you. Like I need to protect your feelings, and you're so nice, and if only I could be into this would be great because I know you would treat me so well and take care of me. But you're just like so nice. Where they just need a little bit more of that like self-respect, edge, game. So generally, those are like the archetypes I'm going into. There's this stereotype that like anybody who'd be looking into a dating or relationship offer has to be like some weirdo incel who's never kissed a girl or still lives with his mom or has zero game. And that's really not always the case. Now, we also got plenty of those leads. And oh my God, I had hundreds of weird stories. Like, it's so hard to tell me a story as a man and me be weirded out or I've not heard it before. Because think about how now I've gone through hundreds and hundreds of conversations with all these different types of men, and the deepest, darkest shit they deal with behind the scenes that most people don't even know about them, and they don't talk to anybody else about this problem. Like, this role keeps finding me, and it's just heightening with this. And when you think about it, like, even if it's not a romantic relationship, relational stuff is such an important aspect of feeling connected and being a human and feeling fulfilled. It's amazing how much we discount it. It's almost so embarrassing, right? Like, it's such a personal area that it can be a lot less embarrassing to be like, yo, I'm going to invest in a personal trainer because I want to get my body in shape. When it comes to like a personal trainer for your personal life instead of your body, now it feels so embarrassing. Now it's like, oh, I should know this stuff, right? Like, I shouldn't need to learn any skills or get any clarity on myself when it comes to men or women. And screw the whole over pathologized therapy talk, attachment style stuff. Like, I don't need any of that. And while I resonate with like those elements and lacks of nuance, the way they're represented sometimes not being a vibe, and I don't really fully align with them, elements of it, I just web watched thousands of times, change people's lives, you know? So it's like, I kept running into this pattern of like there being a stack of proof of all these things and opposite things being true. Now I'm 7 years deep in this online space, and I keep running in to this pattern where I've known lives forged by both poverty and privilege. People who couldn't catch a break to people who seemingly are destined for luck at every turn. The faithful and the loyal to their jobs, to the rebellious entrepreneurs, rural city stay-at-home moms, athletes, artists, entrepreneurs, feminine trad types, masculine game types, playboys, husband types, wifey material, hoes, like this range of politics and cultures and industries and religions and personal stories that I've come in intimate contact with is so insanely massive and diverse and vast. This is why I said, like at the beginning, like I just feel like I've lived 1,000 parallel lives through other people's eyes. And remember, this is mostly just talking about my online experience. I'm also living a whole life of experience offline. So now I have thousands and thousands of thousands of real life experience, first and second hand, of the deepest aspects of human nature. And the only common denominator I can find after exploring the depths of this many stories is the best people in any category struggle to believe me when I say you have more in common with the opposing side than you realize. Feminine, masculine, liberal, Democrat, health gurus versus wealth gurus, relationship-focused people versus money and business-focused people. Like all of it, depending on your beliefs and interests, some of you have an easier time considering the we are all one, this is the way, Tao, everything is the same. Agree with me on this? A lot of people are inclined to discredit my we are all one, everything is the same, they're not really the enemy perspective, because it's usually repped by people who have no real life, meaningful, lived respect or experience with the levels of class, wealth, ambition, power, status that would gold back that perspective if it could. Again, integration, opposites, and that paradox being necessary and being the solution. It sounds crazy, but like my life is a living, breathing testimony to the fact that integration paradox is the solution. And it's inevitable. I end up embodying this paradox of contradictions no matter where I go. The same common denominator in any personal, I haven't even gotten into my personal life backstories. I'm just giving you a trailer of all my work experience in the online world over the last 7 years, right? I haven't even scratched the surface of the deeper storylines within these and the personal life that's happening offline. This mystical, spiritual leaning, energetic vibe thing that I always refer to, it can have this mystical connotation to it. And that can be used to discredit my perspective if I word it that way. It kept getting articulated by my experience. And since I was in sales and I would have to speak to these different niches, even if I wanted to get a concept across about integration or vibe or energy, and I was speaking to somebody who didn't believe in that kind of stuff, I would just word it differently and it would land the same. So much is a semantics issue, So now I'm talking to women on this offer for Hannah, and I'm talking to men for this offer for Sarah. And I'm loving the rotation between the feminine and the masculine, and more of my integration work is happening, and I'm crushing it. Without getting too much into people's business, what always happens and is the nature of the beast, we enter a challenging season in business. I'm trying to do everything I can, in my eyes. Using what I've learned about myself to delegate my time and energy to these different needs of the business outside of sales. Again, I'm finding myself just volunteering one-on-one time with people within the community like I did with Client Ascension. I'm just starting to train talent. I'm not really an outbound dialer, so I will spend hours pouring into the setters and making sure to compensate for my shortcoming there. And that's getting validated by leadership, and I'm vibing. And it's really validating also to teach a skill. You learn so much when you teach. You learn as much, if not more, teaching than you do as the student. So then I'm also integrating and oscillating between that like teacher-student role, right? And I'm pouring into sales talent and go through some challenges in business. Then came another summer that broke me open again. Summer of 2025, which we're on the tail end of. So this summer really humbled me. The first 5 months of the year, I was breaking industry records with sales. I went on a 10 out of 10 closed deal tear at one point on this offer. If editing this and adding all these things I want to show proof of on the video doesn't end up interfering with just pushing this out and posting this, I will share all the receipts of the first 5 months of this year. March was my best month, give or take some data errors on my end. I'm talking 60 to 90% close rates on calls taken. Like insane. And like during some first weeks of the month, like 100% close rate, like insane. Of course, calls taken mean like less unqualified leads were getting my calendar. So it was just closing everything that could be closed. And so I'm feeling on top of the world at the first half of this year. Now we enter summer of 2025. Summer is notoriously known for being slower in the online space. On one level, it's really good to keep working in summer the way and defy the limiting beliefs. Another level, sorry to anyone who might disagree with this, another level is just the nature of the season. People are taking vacation. More people their kids are off school, they have less time. They're just in that mode from the vibe of the season. And so that impacts opportunity. We're also moving through some challenges in the business when it comes to marketing, generating leads, and going through some good and bad drama behind the scenes with people we're trusting with different roles, which isn't just my business to tell us. I'll keep it to that. Anyways, for various reasons, I have empty calendars on these 2 offers that I'm on. I just try to tough it out. I was like, okay, listen, this will be more chill. I got some money set aside. This is just the way it is. Maybe I can carve out some time to center my own writing a personal brand again. Same pattern repeats. As May rolls around, also, shout out to my girl Piper Sortman. She also takes me as her +1 to one of Net Revenue's old clients. And she's hosting a breath retreat. So I go to Costa Rica with Piper on a breath retreat, and I meet another well-known coach who's not in either of these worlds. So again, I'm just meeting more and more clans. Breathwork coaches, there's all kinds of coaches. I'm starting to post on Instagram and Net Revenue. Brings up a partnership opportunity to help me grow my brand and, make some commission if I can help them like find talent and partners. So this summer, empty calendars, commission drought. I decided I'm just going to isolate after the Costa Rica trip. I've come back and I'm like, I just need to isolate and, really focus on my own thing, write and figure out and really let me capitalize on this free time. Because the reason I haven't fully committed to like wanting to climb a ladder or start my own business or whatever is, which I voiced from the jump, my ideal work balance is work for something bigger than me, lucrative incentives, pressure, keeps me moving forward and learning in ways that I wouldn't do alone. And then also alongside it, it's in the feedback loop with my own no lucrative pressure, writing, creative, personal brand self. But again, through yet another chapter, I've just abandoned my own thing. And now I view this summer as time to not accept any social invites, tell the world that I'm just unavailable, lock in, stay home. I isolated at home. I went through a really aggressive cut. I yelled at Ben. I was like, what the hell? Why isn't my talent being put to use? I don't think he knows how profound this was, but it made me realize, like, I have this pattern of I won't deal with so much stress or hardship or whatever I'm going through. And I'll really believe that I can deal with it all myself, similar to my prospects and clients, right? But I will take it to an extreme edge where I just break down and get so angry. And whether that comes out through my writing, I think there's so many people in the online space that you could just tell they're going through a tough season when they start posting like super angry. But mine, it's pretty like I'm really articulate and deep with it. It can be pretty scary. But I'm never like showing up to people that way, I broke down. I got so angry. I'm like, oh my God, I feel like my talent is being wasted. Like I was on a fucking tear. And I call Ben, I yell him about it. And he pointed out that like, listen, I didn't even know you were mad. I would have addressed it. I'm telling you before you get angry next time. Like I had no reason to believe that you were unhappy. And I was like, damn, you're right. I actually didn't really realize I was mad until I just got pissed off all of a sudden. He's like, okay. So he just like green lights. He spins up this opportunity idea he's working on for the company for some client acquisition. And I'm like, fuck yeah, let's do it. I'm supported. I'm hanging in there. I'm beginning to go into some months of like almost no money. And, instead of just like dial, which I've never done, I'm like pouring into talent to try to compensate for that. And nothing's clicking. Like I'm trying to give feedback on one offer and we're going through different shifts with different team members there. Sarah goes through a brief hiatus with her health. When your bank account is draining and you've been trying so much and nothing's clicking and you're not really sure what to do about it, you can be so inactive and feel so tired. Especially since that cut, I was stressed. That shadow side that I hadn't dealt with from the early betrayal started to happen here too, because I was just like burnt out, feeling useless and misunderstood, and just nobody, like I couldn't help myself. It was just so much going on. Anyways, my final stretch of solution. This new sales director, who is my most recent mentor, and is the one through which I will hop on the fourth offer I work with net revenue on. And I remember he pulls up to the community. Shout out to Christian Munoz. He's a total outlier and deviation from the sales process. He doesn't believe in a process. Now, remember, my roots are fuck the process, right? I just love to just riff and freelance. I didn't quite realize how good my skills had gotten because it's almost like Christian, as soon as he gave me a green light to rebel and just be me on calls and say fuck the process, it felt so good. You learn so much and then you go through that season where you can just like let it all go and just trust your natural flow. And he also validated some competencies that I would just organically use that I wasn't aware of. You can be competent at something and not even know. So you can't use that skill on purpose. So he really changed the game for me by not only like giving me permission, validation, and proof that you can just say screw the process and crush it, and then me go out and find that out that I could and feel freer in that skill. Also pointing out some things and tools and that I would say and use that I didn't even know were effective. He's obsessed with a philosophy like we would jam on Nietzsche And he like had his own little team in net revenue that I went and vibed with and made some friends there. So now I'm like, again, migrating to a different group, meeting new people, learning from a new mentor. Again, like this pattern keeps repeating. Sorry for the abrupt jump to this. I planned to have a whole section right here where you're watching. I'm gonna have to leave this video on a little bit of a cliffhanger. I was gonna end this with, all the questions you might have after getting caught up to speed, where I'm at today. Now that I have realized this pattern I've been recycling for the last 7 years, do I have any regrets? What is my offer? Like, what do private clients of mine actually get? What are my perspectives and forecasts on where this is all headed and how to move into it? Whether you want to take off online or you're trying to integrate for your own self journey, I don't think those two things are separate. Oh, the psychology of regret. I don't have any regrets. Believe it or not, I have a theory about why most people do regret and how people can avoid that. But I just got to post this. I've run into so many obstacles. I just need to put it up. Imperfectly. A couple last thoughts. Now that you're caught up in the last 7 years broadly, that was just like a trailer, right? There's so many stories within stories. I also asked ChatGPT to use the transcript of the video to tell me how many people I referred to. And between the individuals and the groups that I referenced, there's like over 100 people. So I'm going to probably throw in the description everybody's social media handles, although I might run out of characters. In some way, I will give shout outs to everybody because here's the thing. In hindsight, not everybody or everything that I experienced or met or crossed paths with ended up being what I thought they were. But no matter what I think of people or how I experienced things then, when I told you what happened and how I felt at the time and what I realized a little bit, no matter that, I'm grateful to it all. These are all characters in the story of my life and like my come up journey. And I invite you to look at your life the same. So a couple last thoughts. So now I'm at the end of this like 7-year cycle that I've been in, right? On this upward spiral staircase journey where I've been repeating a pattern, but each rotation of the pattern has been on a higher level, which is ascension, right? Not just rotating the same level. Now I'm at the end of that cycle. And with this new awareness, the shadow work element I touched on, which I'm not here to have any beef with anyone or like correct anybody's perception of that situation. Like, it's not lost on me that the betrayal origin story, there aren't people in my online circles that won't be able to put together who I'm talking about. But that's not the point. That's just old news. It's so freaking irrelevant. I can't even explain it. The only reason I'm bringing it up now is because I didn't really realize how relevant it still was. That chapter left me with scars. It was a blind spot in my pattern recognition, which is one of my gifts. It caused a lot of mistrust and paranoia and an instinct to withhold credit a lot where it was due. And that's why you've seen me cycle into bitterness during some of these phases. So that's the only reason it was relevant in this story. That experience shook me so badly, like it became 2 significant times that people saw online. So I just want to offer some insight behind that. Just want to acknowledge how that marked me. Some people can call this whistleblowing. I get it. That's always controversial, right? I'm not here to drag names. I'm here to name patterns and reach a new level of being able to help people with their version of the same sort of thing. I can live with being seen as too candid. I can live with being seen as a villain. I can't live with being the person who, once they have a new level of awareness, who doesn't live from that truth, I've traced the root of those things and I'm owning it here. On that note, I'd like to be very clear. I'm not landing on anything conclusive. During these 2 times that got raised up in me, was I actually picking up on the same energy? Or was I completely projecting and acting out for absolutely no reason and crashing out? I'm going to leave that inconclusive. I think this is something I dive into in another video too. I know how people can form their own regret-free operating system for life. And just to touch on it really quick, I think it has a lot to do with time anxiety. Not increasing and maximizing the ROI of each experience in a way that you would never want to change it in the past because you have to give up some of the existential profit that you got from moving through those challenges. And a lot of that has to do with presence, right? When I'm focused on myself, it's like my world evolves on me. When I'm focused on things outside me, my world revolves around them. And that rotation is such a gift and I think a skill that people need because most people half-ass both, right? You've seen those memes about whenever you're on vacation or you're with your loved ones, your head and your presence is still half at work. And when you're at work, your head and your presence and your guilt is still half with your loved ones or half at thinking about relaxing or being on vacation. Being able to fully cement in the present, no matter what you're focusing on, is a huge way to just metabolize and cement in the present of your experiences and pull all you can from them. And not live in such a perpetual sacrifice mode, right? Where you're perpetually sacrificing yourself to prioritize things outside you, or you're perpetually sacrificing things outside you to be selfish and self-centered and self-focused, right? It's more about an oscillation and rotation. So I'll get into more of that. Integration, discernment, how to use taste. I'll dive into more of my gifts so that other people can use them, right? Like my pattern recognition skills, like how do I connect dots where others don't? How to use nonlinear thinking, whether that comes natural to you or you want to just like learn about it to try to practice it by nurture, like remix ideas and connect dots across disciplines that people don't see as related. Taste and cultural instinct. I'll be talking a lot about that, as plenty of you have seen me do online. New era branding and stuff like that. Really excites me. It's like the new version of art. How to translate complexity into resonance, because complexity that's confusing is very different to complexity that is clear and has a lot of depth. So I really want to dive into that. Why sometimes it feels like I'm reading your mind, even when I'm not. I'm going to go deeper into that phenomenon so that you have more clarity there. It's not what you think. Do you regret those shadow work seasons? Honestly, I don't regret that either. Of course, I don't like to scare or hurt people or like poke at their insecurities. And that can be a really reckless risk to take out in public. But unfortunately, I think that it was necessary on my path. I suffered a lot for it, which is my responsibility to own. But it was also my way of staying true to energetic hygiene in my relational situations. And it was a better solution until I resolved this than acting out with people. So I will dive deeper into that in the future. I'm just going to avoid going off on another tangent. Are you going to continue this pattern of balancing two things? Or are you about to go all in on your own? I'm going to leave that open-ended too. I'll say this. Obviously, balancing two things in its current form couldn't continue. That much is very, very clear. I'm working on that. But it's definitely a new cycle. I am taking on maximum 3 private clients newly, and I'm no longer working with net revenue. I will put up an application if you want to explore working with me and or being paired with one of the coaches that I vouch for, kind of that guidance counselor role, right? Where like I compare you with point you to the right person to align with based on your needs, or because I'm just not willing to take on a ton of work like that. So feel free to look out for that application, apply there, or just message me or DM me or email me on any platform for now until the application is up. How do you know that you should reach out to me to work with me? You got to have a stomach for clarity. We got a vibe and the energy's right for that. Any of my inbound prospects who have gotten on a call and explored that with me, you guys will know what I mean by that. You need to be prepared to make at least a 4-figure investment. The specifics of that will depend on the specifics of what I would prescribe to you as a solution or two. If we hop on a call, on a discovery call, right? I'm not only here to see if we're a good fit. Also, if we are a good fit, what timeline, dosing, style would be best tailored to you based on what we talk about, whether that's through a professional lens or a personal lens. You guys typically tend to approach me with one or the other. I'll be very straightforward. It ends up involving the other because these things aren't separate. And I think the whole online economy is about to learn just how real it is when I say that authentic internal world and external world alignment is the make it or break it factor moving into this next season. Even how I help, big brands get clarity around their avatars or their brand principles. Like those are just extensions of getting to know them. I can't prescribe them things that are mine. So I'll get deeper into mine and other people's in upcoming videos. I need to shut up and stop yapping and just post this. But if you made it this far, thank you so much for your attention. And you might want to hit me up because what the hell? It's long as fuck. All right. Stay tuned. Got a lot more. None of the upcoming ones will be this fucking long. I will break it down for you. I got your back. Last quarter of the year, I'm in Australia. It's beautiful here. A lot of people in the collective are entering a new chapter. you're definitely going to be see me showing up in different ways that you haven't really seen before. All right, talk soon.